If everyone would please take their seats, we're going to get started with our meeting. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:00 p.m. on June the 25th, 2024. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Peoria City Council meeting, everyone in chambers, also everyone who's watching, listening on channel WCBU and watching on cable channel 22. Madam Clerk, the council mics are open. Please call the roll.
Mayor Ali.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Sear.
Here.
Councilmember Gordon Young.
Present.
Councilmember Graham. Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Euler.
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Here.
Councilmember Valpula.
Present.
And Councilmember Vespa.
Here.
You have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Everyone, please join me and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk,
We are at the approval of the minutes.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the joint City Council and Town Board meeting held June 11th, 2024 as printed.
Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Any questions or comments? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We have a public hearing. 24-162 is a public hearing regarding the submission of a grant application to the State of Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for the Urban Shelter Grant Program, and we'll need a motion to open the hearing.
Okay. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing? Moved by Councilmember Sear, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to turn the floor over to Catherine Murphy from our Community Development Department. She is the head of our Grants Division, and she'll talk through the reason why we're having this public hearing, and then we'll open it up for public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this public hearing is regarding a grant application to the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for the Urban Shelter Grant Program. The city is required to be the applicant on this grant on behalf of Salvation Army for a new construction of a homeless shelter. The new shelter is proposed to be built at the current Labor Temple site with no displacement of their current residents. The application requests $2 million in the state COVID money with a total project cost of around $11 million that will benefit our low-income residents that are experiencing homelessness. The new shelter will increase their capacity from 45 to 72 individuals per night. So the project will be funded through this state grant as well as Salvation Army funds.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Is there anyone who would like to speak to or comment on the public hearing regarding the submission of a grant application to the State of Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for the Urban Shelter Grant Program? Again, is there anyone that would like to speak to the public hearing regarding the Urban Shelter Grant application? And lastly, is there anyone who would like to speak to the public hearing regarding the submission of the grant application for the Urban Shelter Grant Application Program? Councilmember Regenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may just make a comment.
Sure.
There are representatives of the leadership from the Salvation Army are here tonight, and I just want to acknowledge their presence and thank them for their leadership in this. The Salvation Army shelter that we're referencing in this grant application is the only low barrier shelter in the city of Peoria, and it provides and serves a very specific population, and we're very grateful to have them and appreciate their taking the lead on this very important matter. So I just wanted to thank them for being here and thank them for their vision for addressing this problem.
Absolutely. It's a very exciting project. Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Moved by Councilmember Sears, seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We have one town item. 24-163 is a request from the town supervisor to approve an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Peoria regarding the lease of a portion of the Peoria Township Relief Office for the Co-Response Model Project.
Councilmember Grant, trustee.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I move to approve that intergovernmental agreement with the City of Peoria regarding the leasing of 427 West Main, the Peoria Township Release Office. And I would furthermore like to thank our police superintendent and his staff and our state lawmakers for helping to make this co-response model a reality for our city and certainly at this location.
Seconded by trustee Jackson. Any comments or questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are back to the city portion of the agenda. We're at the consent agenda. 24-164 is a communication from the city manager and director of community development with a request to approve the 2024 annual action plan for submission to the Department of Housing and Urban Development with a total grant allocation of $2,647,200. 24-165 is a communication with a request to approve a purchase with Rarig Pacific Company for 702 702 new 95-gallon garbage carts for replacement and inventory in an amount not to exceed $40,187. 24-168 is a communication with a request to approve contracts for the 2024 vacant lot clearing services in an amount not to exceed $750,000. 24-167 is a communication with request to approve an intergovernmental agreement with the town of the city of Peoria regarding the lease of a portion of the Peoria Township Relief Office for the Co-Response Model Project. 24-168 is a communication with request for the following. A, approve a highway authority agreement between the city of Peoria and City Gas, Inc. for the property known as 629 West Glen Avenue, Peoria, Illinois. And B, adopt an ordinance for a limited area for groundwater for properties known as PIN numbers 1421-151-014, 14-21-151-016, 14-21-151-032, 14-21-151-033, 14-21-151-034, 14-21-151-035, 14-21-151-036, 14-21-151-037, and 14-21-301-001, together with all of the public street right-of-way of West Glen Avenue, extending its entire width adjoining the above-described subject premises, and all of the public street right-of-ways of North Sheridan Road, extending from its center line eastward to its eastern right-of-way line adjoining the above-described subject premises, including the intersection at West Glen Avenue, Peoria, Illinois. 24-169 is a communication with a request to approve a resolution in support of a grant application to the State of Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for the Urban Shelter Grant Program. 24-170 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance rezoning property from a Class R4 single-family residential district to a Class CN neighborhood commercial district for the properties located at 308, 310, and 312 South Saratoga Street, Peoria, Illinois. 24-160 is a communication with request to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 27, Article 12, Section 267 of the Code of the City of Peoria to revise the Motor Fuel Code violation penalties. 24-171 is a communication with request to deny the site application for a Class B restaurant 50% food liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol for Empire Lounge, LLC, doing business as Empire Lounge at 3033 North Sterling, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to deny. 24-172 is a communication with request to approve the site application for a Class B restaurant 50% food liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol for Dyer Hospitality Group, LLC, doing business as Reservations at 718 West Glen Avenue, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve. 24-173 is an appointment and reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Solid Waste Landfill Committee with a request to concur of Councilmember Mike Vespa and Councilmember Timothy Rickenbach. 24-174 is an appointment and reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Advisory Commission on Housing with a request to concur of Cynthia Rivers, Bree Mulbauer, Cheryl Boswell, Jane Genzel, Regina Morgan, Sean Hayes, and Vaibhav Shah. 24-175 is an appointment and reappointment by Mayor Ali to the CDBG Public Services Advisory Commission with a request to concur of David Feltz and Kimberly McGee. 24-176 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Construction Commission with a request to concur of Dennis Shoemaker. 24-177 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Downtown Advisory Commission with a request to concur of Ryan Shearer. 24-178 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Downtown Development Corporation with a request to concur of Councilmember Charles V. Graham. 24-179 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the East Village Growth Cell Committee with a request to concur of Letitia Clemens. 24-180 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Fire and Police Commission with a request to concur of Kelly Peterson. 24-181 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Historic Preservation Commission with a request to concur of Edward Berry and Reagan Leslie Hill. 24-182 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Liquor Commission with a request to concur of Paul Winkler. 24-183 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Mayor's Advisory Committee for Citizens with Disabilities with a request to concur of Kay Berry. 24-184 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Municipal Band Commission with a request to concur of Molly Slaughter, Mary Barthel, Don Baker, and Lee Winger. 24-185 is an appointment and reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Area Convention and Visitors Bureau with a request to concur of Kim Armstrong, Timothy Cundiff, Roberta English, and Christopher Setti. 24-186 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Civic Center Authority with a request to concur of Yvonne Greer-Batten and Lon Lyons. 24-187 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Housing Authority Board with a request to concur of Robert Culp, Kadar Hefner, and Carl Cannon. 24-188 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Public Arts Advisory Commission with a request to concur of DeMarcus Hamilton, Betty Jane Lawrence, Perry Johnson, Bill Conger, and Charlize Lewis. 24-189 is an appointment and reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Public Library Board of Trustees with a request to concur of Jacob Roberts, Courtney Lee, and Roberta Parks. 24-190 is an appointment and reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Urban Forestry Advisory Board with a request to concur of Tiffany Eccles and Matt Freeman. 24-191 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Planning and Zoning Commission with a request to concur of Eric Hurd, Brandon Martin, and Richard Unas. 24-192 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Sister City Commission with a request to concur of Julie Enzenberger and Randy Corey. 24-193 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Springdale Cemetery Management Authority with a request to concur of Kathy Ma. 24-194 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Tourism Reserve Fund Committee with a request to concur of Councilmember Bernice Gordon-Young, Marwin Spiller, Gregory Wilson, and Dan Curry. 24-195 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Transportation Commission with a request to concur of George Garib, Brandon Lott, Patrick McNamara, Jeremy Coors, Michael Breitbach, and James Cotting. 24-196 is a reappointment by Mayor Ali to the Zoning Board of Appeals with a request to concur of Lon Lyons. 24-197 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Advisory Committee on Police Community Relations with a request to concur of Stephanie Braggs, Daryl Jackson, and Marcellus Somerville. And that concludes our consent agenda.
Take a breath, Madam Clerk. Great job.
Thank you.
Are there any items to remove from consent? Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to have item number 24-171 removed.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 24-164.
Thank you. Are there any other items to remove? Councilmember Seer.
Move to approve. Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Move to approve.
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Gordon Young. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
24-164 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to approve the 2024 Annual Action Plan for submission to the Department of Housing and Urban Development with a total grant allocation of $2,647,200.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, I probably should have called you about this, but I did not. I notice in the background that there was a 1% increase in funding from HUD for CDBG funding. and yet we have a decrease in that funding of $16,701.
That was a typo.
Is there a reason for the decrease?
Councilman, let me turn the floor over to Catherine Murphy, who manages these funds, and I'll let her explain the rationale behind that.
Thank you, Councilman. So in the body of that is actually a typo to say that there's a 1% decrease when it should have said, increase when it should have said decrease. At the line item where it says how much money that we are receiving, it gives us the total for 2024 and then indicates we received a decrease of $16,000.
Thank you. I make those sorts of mistakes all the time, so thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Madam Clerk?
I believe we need a motion on that item.
Oh, yes. Councilmember Kelly, did you want to make a motion there?
I will move to approve.
Seconded by Councilmember Valpula. Any questions or discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
24-171 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to deny the site application for a Class B restaurant 50% food liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol for Empire Lounge, LLC, doing business as Empire Lounge at 3033 North Sterling, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to deny.
Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was discussed at the May meeting of the Wardcliff Neighborhood Association to have its next meeting at the Empire Lounge. There were some folks who were absent, and many folks had expressed the fact that they had not had an opportunity to visit, so that decision was made unanimously. So I would like to defer this item until the July 23rd meeting. It would give them an opportunity to host their neighborhood association meeting at the Empire Lounge.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Can I get a second? Seconded by Councilmember Euler. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I may be a little behind on this. Do they currently have a certificate of occupancy? Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. The motion is to defer until the second meeting in July. Is there any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at first readings. 24-198 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to receive and file a first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Unified Development Code relating to ground-mounted solar energy devices.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the first reading, our Assistant Community Development Director, Leah Austin, is here, and she'll walk through the proposed ordinance.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager. This is a proposed text amendment brought to you specific to ground-mounted solar facilities when located in a front yard. So currently the regulations allow front yard ground-mounted solar facilities if they meet the setbacks of the property, of the lot. You may have seen an installation up on North Knoxville, just north of the War Memorial intersection. When we received that application, we processed it, but it brought to our attention maybe a situation that wasn't favorable for ground-mounted in a front yard. So that's the proposed backstory for the regulation. We feel that those types of structures can be large, not appropriate for front yard, more appropriate for a backyard or side yard if there's enough room. So the regulation prohibits, from this point forward, if approved, ground-mounted solar structures in front yards, but allows them in the other yards, again, with appropriate setbacks. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Councilmember Velpula?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you explain the rationale of why only you are allowing in the backyard, not in the front? I did not quite get that.
So for zoning purposes, the front yard is really that vista of visibility from the street of any property. And your principal structure is usually what you would primarily see. And then accessory structures, which ground-mounted solar, sheds, play equipment, are usually more appropriate for a side or backyard, mostly backyards. So that's really the intent, is to maintain that open front yard as an aesthetically pleasing, desirable visibility for any property, and place those accessory structures more appropriately in rear yards.
Thank you.
Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Would anything in the ordinance allow someone to come as a special use to have it in a front yard? Say it was a largely setback property on University or Knoxville that's treed at the front and it wouldn't be visible?
Thank you for that question. The relief for this would be through a variance. So if someone does feel that their front yard is most appropriate for the accessory ground-mounted structure, they can apply for a variance that, depending upon the amount of relief requested, could be an administrative variance all the way through a zoning board of appeals major variance. So there is a relief valve for that special situation.
Thank you.
Good question. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Assistant Director Allison.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to receive and file? Moved by Councilmember Gordon Young, seconded by Councilmember Velpula. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
24-199 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to receive and file a first reading of an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Unified Development Code relating to parking.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you again. I'll turn the floor over to Assistant Director Allison to walk through this item.
Thank you. So this is really a cleanup issue. We found unintentionally that at some point in the past, our regulations relating to parking, specifically for our downtown, is where we noticed the hiccup, prohibited parking decks, which clearly we have in the downtown area. So we're bringing this to you to clean that situation, to allow parking decks as they used to be in a previous version of the code and appropriately in the downtown district. We took the opportunity to actually clean up that whole section of parking, make it easier to read, and hopefully return things back to the way they should be.
Questions? Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to receive and file.
Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Questions? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Director. Madam Clerk?
We are at regular business. 24-200 is a communication from the City Manager and Chief of Police with a request to approve the sole source purchase of 5 vehicles from a Peoria-based auto group for an amount not to exceed $250,000, not to exceed $50,000 per vehicle. And this item requires a 2/3 vote of the council members voting, no less than 6 votes.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a purchase of vehicles for the Neighborhood Services Unit, and the chief is here to answer any questions if the council has any.
Chief?
No questions? Yeah, these are 5 vehicles that we want to purchase that are coming from a grant. Thankfully, our grant manager, who's sitting back here, left some indirect cost in the grant and was able to do an amendment to get these vehicles. We have trailers, light cameras, light trailers that we need to pull. Our NSU unit is the unit that usually goes out and puts these trailers out in the neighborhoods, and we needed these type of vehicles for them to be able to really do the things that they do and carry the items that they carry in some of the neighborhood events as well.
Chief.
And again, it's coming from grants.
Councilmember Sear,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve.
seconded by Councilmember Gordon Young. Councilmember Grant?
No, ma'am.
Nope.
I-
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm for it and
Okay.
accidentally hit the button.
Okay. Got it. Any questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Clerk?
24-201 is a communication from the city manager and chief of police with a request for the following. A, accept the fiscal year 2024 recruitment and retention grant from the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board in the amount of $175,000. And B, adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2024-2025 biennial budget relating to the general fund to recognize the receipt of grant funding from the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board in the amount of $175,000. And item B requires a 2/3 vote of the council members voting no less than 6 votes. And item C is to approve the sole source purchase of 300 personalized Yeti coolers directly from Yeti in the amount of $62,951.13. And this item requires a 2/3 vote of council members voting no less than 6 votes, and each item needs a separate vote, please.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager?
Again, the chief is up at the podium. I'll let him explain this, but it's, again, nice to be receiving funds that aren't locally generated. It's state funds, and he'll explain what we're going to be doing with these funds from Gillespie.
Yes, thank you. I remind everybody, this is just a very small percentage of the $17.5 million in grants that, again, our grant manager, Jenny Urquiza, has written and is managing since I hired her in June of 22, one of my first hires, and absolutely one of the best hires. And this is just, again, a small percentage of that. We are going to be saving quite a bit of that money because, if I'm correct, this is a 3-year grant. But part of this grant part of it is retention as well. So I know when people look at 300 personalized Yeti coolers, alarms may go off. Part of our retention, right? This is not just our officers. It's everybody that works in our police department. We want to be able to give them something, to thank them for what they do. Again, this is 0.5% of all the money that we've received, and we thought it was appropriate. It's not an idea that I'll give credit to where credit's due. I got this idea from Rockford PD. The Chief Red over there is doing the same thing, and I stole her idea. I love the idea to be able to give our officers something to thank them, and our professional staff who often feel left out. This agency does not run without our professional staff, our civilian staff, who do a phenomenal job every day as well. So this is just a token from us to them. And again, I'll share some numbers with you, if you will. Let me pull them up here. We have 22 officers at the age of 50 with over 20 years and 13 at the age of 50 with 25 years. We know that we are going to be seeing quite a bit of retirements here in the near future. And don't mind me here, I got a bunch of paperwork. I'm going to give you another number here just to let everybody know where we're at. As of today, we started the year with 218 sworn. We're at 214. And those numbers that I gave you, we're going to see another 30 by the end of next year retire or not be here, right? Out of 218, we only have 206 who are actively working without restrictions. We have people in the military, we have people who are injured, et cetera. And so part of that, what you see is that number is 206. But the positive about this is we have 24 applicants right now for our January class, and the process is still open till July 31st. So anybody listening, we're still taking applications for that January class. Please reach out to us. And we have currently 19 in background process for our September 2024 class. And I'm allotted at this point 222 officers on staff. So again, this is just a small percentage, but a big thank you to our police department for the hard work they do every day.
Thank you, Chief. And first I want to say $17.5 million in grants over 2 years is pretty darn amazing, Miss Jenny. Pretty darn amazing, yes. And then relative to item C with the Yeti coolers, is that expense coming from a grant?
Directly from this recruitment and retention grant,
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
so that's an approved cost within that
Yes,
grant?
ma'am.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Any questions for the chief? Can I get a motion somewhere? Councilmember Jackson? Sorry, there we go.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that item A be approved.
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Riggenbach. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Councilmember Jackson?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that item B would be approved.
Seconded by Councilmember Riggenbach. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Jackson?
And Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion that item C would also be approved.
Seconded by Councilmember Riggenbach. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk.
24-202 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve the site application for a Class B restaurant 50% food liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol for Highly Flavored Peoria, LLC, doing business as Highly Flavored at 456 Fulton Street, Suite 186, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve, contingent upon the issuance of an agreed-upon plan of operation. And on your desk, on yellow, there are handouts, a letter from the applicant.
Okay. Council, is it Council Hayes speaking to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
So the Liquor Commission held a hearing, which is summarized in the materials. The applicant had applied for a 2 a.m. closing. The location is within the Twin Towers Mall, former site of the Creve Coeur Club. So the applicant withdrew that 2 a.m. request at the hearing. The Liquor Commission heard the matter. There was a record developed about activities of this same applicant at the prior site that they were located at Landmark within the area of the bowling alley. And the operator of the bowling alley put a letter in the record, but then the applicant also submitted a letter with a cease and desist. It's obvious that there's a dispute between the operator of the Landmark and this business, which is more thoroughly explained in the materials presented to council. I'm happy to answer any specific questions on that. That being said, the Liquor Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the site application contingent on the issuance of an agreed-upon plan of operations. The Liquor Commission was concerned about the hours and suggested a limitation to 11 p.m. For operation of the restaurant with liquor. In staff's review of this matter, in developing the operations plan, which will be part of the licensure process, not part of the council approval. The council would either approve or deny the site location.
Exactly.
The plan of operations, though, I had my staff include some materials on that in the council communication so that the council would be clear. As part of our ordinary business practices, we require the applicants to provide a copy of their lease if they don't own the premises that they operate out of. The lease that this entity has presented to date restricts the hours of operation until 8 p.m. It's our understanding that the group that operates the Twin Towers Mall has not yet taken action whether to expand that 8 p.m. closer time or not. It would, just so the council understands, it would be staff's intention to recommend to the mayor that the plan of operations include a limitation to 8 p.m. respecting the lease until such time as the applicant would present written authority from the landlord to expand their operations. Staff would be amenable, if the mayor is, to expand their operations up to 11 p.m. as suggested by the Liquor Commission if the landlord approves that. We wanted you to be aware as well that the plan of operation would address in some way or fashion the access to the area of the general mall. If you're familiar with that footprint, there are a number of businesses that would be closed late in the evening, and this would really be the only business that has that open access from their entryway into the mall area. And so there'll be a couple areas on the plan of operations to deal with the realities of that footprint, as well as the late night and sole operation. If council approves, we'll present those plan of operations details to the mayor. The applicant may want to adjust those, but that'll be part of the licensure process, and that's typical. If the council isn't aware, we have a few entities in town that operate with a plan of operations in place, and we do that to reduce any sort of chaos or upheaval at those establishments, and we've had good outcomes from those efforts. I don't know if there's any other questions that the council may have. I just wanted to update one additional matter. There's an item in here in your materials indicating that they had not paid their city restaurant taxes in February or March, and they still haven't paid those, and they haven't paid for April. But we'll be addressing that with the applicant as a condition of licensure as well.
Okay.
I am addressing that only because it's in the materials
Sure.
that you received. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, council. Good information. I don't see any lights. This is located in District 2, so I'm going to turn to Councilmember Graham.
Madam Mayor, the petitioner contacted me and wished to address the council, and I'm not averse to that, as long as there's not a majority of us who would oppose allowing him to address the council. But I'm just going to say this: if he's allowed to address the council, people who might have a contrary view should be allowed to address as well.
Seeing no objection, Mr. Sargent?
No objection.
No. You can, no objection from the council
I'm
in
sorry.
terms of your communication.
I just wanted to have a time to thank you for the meeting, Madam Mayor and City Council members. And I wrote a letter to you guys. Hopefully you read it and you kind of have some insight on who I am and what I'm about. But for those who don't know, or maybe not had a chance to read it, I just want to address the council now. And I wanted to ask, when you look at me, what do you see? For me, I'm an Army veteran. I served my country between 2008 and 2011. I was honorably discharged. So, I believe our Army values some are dignity and integrity, and those are some of the values I hold true to myself. I also wanted to remind the city councilman that I owned and operated the Fry Spot since 2021, where we were located in the residential area up on Prospect, where we had a full liquor license there as well, full bar. And in the residential area, we had no infractions or, no complaints from the residents nearby. Also on Dries Lane, I operated the Fry Spot for over a year. I made good relations with Wally, the owner there, the owner of the Premier building, where there's also a full liquor license and gaming there as well, where I operated, and there was no infractions and no issues there either. So I said it to say that, that's my track record. I've been a pretty much an upstanding citizen in the city of Peoria. I've done my best to do good business and put out good food. I humble myself to actually work in the kitchen in my restaurants because that's where I find my peace. You know, that's where my gift comes from. And I also think that this decision, this vote that you guys are passing down is bigger than me. This decision is, to me, it's about equal opportunity. I truly believe that everyone deserves, a chance to do their best. I'm standing before you battling slander and things that were said about me, opposed to things that was true. And all I can say is I appreciate your time. Nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. Councilman Grant?
Are there any other people who wish to address the council?
Everyone. My name is Shondell Walker, and I'm just a concerned community member. I really appreciate what this young man said, but I am opposed to highly flavored being in the Twin Towers. I just drove up the street, coming past Main Street, and I drove past Bison and Hoops. And the stench of alcohol, the people laying on curves, it's just egregious. And I don't think, and I'm quite sure some more people would agree with me, that we should have liquor served in the Twin Towers. It's not a place that I think that alcohol should be there. Now, I appreciate the fact that he went to the Army and served this country and did some outstanding things. I'm not opposed to you putting alcohol in any place in America, but the Twin Towers, I'm not for it. I oppose it. And my father was a Vietnam veteran. He served his country. We all do some things. We all make some choices. We all make some mistakes and stuff like that. But at the same time, nothing changes if nothing changes. Meaning, if we allow this stuff to go on, it's going to continue to be madness in the city of Peoria. Now, I moved from Chicago to better myself in this city. Now, I gravitated towards the city of Peoria. It's a great community out here. I'm just a concerned community member. I just walked into the Twin Tower today, ordered me some sandwiches today. I had peace of mind. It was tranquil. It was just awesome. To see this madness carry on at nighttime at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, whatever, what have you, it's absurd. I don't believe it belongs there. I don't believe we need more homeless people hanging out there, more alcoholics hanging out there. We don't need this madness. We're trying to improve the city, not tear it down. And I think that the police department is doing an outstanding job. But they will have more problems on their hand had highly flavored be allowed inside the Twin Towers. The new flavor in your ear is not to put them there. Thank you.
Is there someone else?
Good evening, Council. My name is Harold Dawson. I'm actually in support of Mr. Sargent. Now, everybody's entitled to their opinion. The gentleman before me spoke upon, new day and age, stuff that he didn't want to see. I was a very supportive patron of highly flavored. Never witnessed anything uncanny or anything that was, unruly while attending highly flavored. I do believe that, the environment that he mentioned with your neon bisons, your hoops, it's not the same environment that is brought that Mr. Sargent provides. It's a very controlled environment. Now, it's not perfect. We all know we live in Peoria. We know what we're up against. But, I've witnessed him de-escalate situations. I've witnessed him be very upstanding into, decisions being made within his establishment while still running the business. So, what I need to say is nothing that he didn't already address, but very upstanding businessman and good food. We live in Peoria. I'm tired of traveling to Chicago to eat good. So the flavor that he is providing in our community is not only that's edible, but also that can be felt, which is, the highly flavored establishment that he did give to the city. Thank you.
Welcome. There's someone else?
Hello, and I would like to address the council in favor of highly flavored. I would like to say that I would ask that the council separate highly flavored from landmark. I think that due to issues that were already ongoing with landmark, and then highly flavored moved in, and the issues continued. So I think they kind of got an unfair rap because they just grouped the problems that were already ongoing with highly flavored. And I think it's important that they are separated. Landmark, they were already having issues out there. So I'm just asking that you separate that and look at his track record in his other businesses that he had already started and were successful. So I would just like the council to keep that in mind when making that decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else?
Good evening. My name is LaShann Nunn. I guess I'm a East Bluff community advocate, and I am opposed to highly flavored getting a liquor license in the Twin Tower building. Not taking away that they do have great wings, but the service is horrible. And I just want to speak on what I experienced, and I will never visit highly flavored again. The smoking of the marijuana in my presence, alcohol, just the bartender, whoever they had serving at the bar, she was just pouring alcohol to all of her friends, and I'm there at a party, at an event. And I did not appreciate that. I have pictures, and I may even have a video of them smoking weed in the establishment during business hours. So I am opposed to highly flavored getting a liquor license in the Twin Tower. It would not be good for the businesses. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, hello. My name is Sierra Sargent, and I am Jeremy Sargent's wife. I just wanted to speak a little bit. I heard a little bit of the concerns as far as the young lady said smoking, and one thing I will say, we did not allow that. If we did notice it, Jeremy was very good at making sure that that person was told to put out whatever they were doing, as well as if they continue to do it, they were put out. Our children came to highly flavored quite often, so the things that we did not agree with, we made sure that it was something that our kids would be comfortable in being in. We tried to provide an environment for everyone from sunup to sundown to make sure that they felt comfortable eating and partaking in, if they wanted to, in the alcohol. Like the young man said, I just want the council board to take us away from what was already being done in Landmark and look at us and see our track record of what we've had with the Fry Spot and what we tried to bring with Highly Flavored and what we're trying to continue to bring.
Anyone else?
Hello, Rob Hanauer. I'm a business owner in the Twin Towers. And since I sit on Facebook and comment about nearly everything, I figured I should at least have the courage to stand up here and say what I think as opposed to letting Facebook do all my talking. Let's take a look. I recognize that we want to be able to segregate or separate the calls that were placed to Landmark generally and identify what was happening at Highly Flavored as opposed to Landmark and its totality. That, for whatever reason, has been difficult because police reports that have been requested, apparently there have been so many police reports that it would take too long to redact them in response to a FOIA request. Actually, 2. Which tells you that there are problems at Landmark. But let's take a look at what we do know. And this is information that has been provided to council. During the less than 1 year run that Highly Flavored was located at Landmark, there were 119 police calls, okay? And we can break that down. 22 calls for disorderly conduct, 6 battery or fighting calls, 30 gunshots, 2 calls for people with guns, 1 assault call, 19 incident reports, and 1 gunshot victim. Now, that's all of Landmark. I understand. We have problems in this city. It's a great city. I work here. I like it here. But let's also look at some more information that's been made available to you all. When you compare the months preceding Highly Flavored going in there to the months that Highly Flavored was located in there, similar number of preceding months, total calls for service increased by 37%, okay? So even if we can't identify Highly Flavored, we know that there's only one difference. And there's been a 37% increase in crime. Now, beyond that, what kind of crime increased? Violent crime calls for service increased by 300%. Disorderly conduct calls for service increased by 300%. Battery and fighting calls by increase for service calls increased by 200%. Police incident reports increased by 46%. Across the board, there was an increase in everything, including violent crime, okay? So, we're talking about having a plan of operation. Why do we need to start with a plan of operation for an applicant? If they're a good applicant, we don't have to be talking about how we'll have to square away debts that are owed before they get their license. That'll be all part of it. We can also talk about the fact that we want to say that the Fry Spot ran perfectly, there were not problems. There are judgments in Peoria County against the applicant's prior businesses. This is not, I am not opposed to having the Highly Flavored restaurant, no alcohol, in our building. But we need to be very careful about licensing good applicants. And I do want to speak to something. I find it highly offensive that there was a news article that went out that people in power allowed to happen, where it made it look like anybody that was opposed to Highly Flavored including maybe the proprietors of Landmark, were racist. Sometimes it's not race-based. It's simple facts of public safety. You know, the Liquor Commission the commissioner, Camille Coates, made a comment with respect to Empire Lounge, that she believes in public safety. That's something important to her. That's why she was mad that there was a party there or some sort of event without a certificate of occupancy. You know, the reality is we need to look at all the problems that we've heard from people up here tonight. And I would respectfully request that you deny the application. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Hello, I'm Estrella. I am opposed to it just because I don't feel like, yes, there's a lot of places down here that do serve alcohol, and I just feel like it's giving people another opportunity to. And if you know, on the weekends, downtown does get a little crazy. So I feel as though just to kind of keep the Twin Towers safe and that just a little bit safe, I don't think it would be best to, you know, give them the license. Although it is a nice idea to have, I don't think it would be beneficial just because I feel like it just adds a little bit more danger just because when people are under the influence, they aren't thinking clearly. And when you're seeing so many options to go get alcohol, it's just giving people another option too. And especially with, you know, if they're open on the weekends, but just in general, I just don't feel like it would be smart to give people another option to have a place to go. If, you know, say one place isn't open, you know, go to this because, you know, downtown is pretty busy, and I just feel like it would, to keep public safety there, just to not be able to give it to them. But that's all that I have.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening, Council. My name is Darcy. I am opposed to this approval simply because of the backstory and the conflict. I am of the opinion that moving forward solely as a restaurant without the ability to serve alcohol at this time would be of the greatest benefit to the business and the community, with further consideration in the future. That seems to be the most logical solution to this conflict at this time from what I've seen. I do want to say in defense of this restaurant that issues that have happened at Landmark, similar things have also happened with local Northwoods Mall. And so I'm someone who is a stats nerd. I love numbers. I think they state things crystal clear. However, I do think we need to understand the direct source and causes of these conflicts within our community without making a blanket statement towards a business. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? Councilmember Grant?
Well, colleagues, I have to look at this as relates to the applicant and not in an ad hominem way. But any applicant who would be wanting to come downtown and go into the Twin Tower Mall, this introduces public safety complexities, complex challenges. For one thing, the mall is rather open. Our police department has remarked about the openness and the lack of supervision as people would move into that building to go to whatever establishment it might be in the later evening hours. And you know, we do have other people who have property interests too. And some of them have signed this petition here, and they have offices or residences across the street. I think they have some rights. I think they should be listened to very closely. The proposed site is also in the bar district downtown. Everybody knows that. And there are currently 20 liquor license establishments in the bar district. In Peoria, we continue to sadly have situations where all available Peoria police officers have to respond to the downtown because of unruly crowds, shots fired, fights, etc. What we have now is a public safety and officer safety nightmare. What we have now siphons off police resources for the rest of our city in all 5 of our districts, leaving our neighborhoods short. Now, between October of 2023 through May of 2024, this applicant operated under the name Highly Flavored at Landmark. This is history. Can't change history. And during that time, there were 119 calls for service that included fights, weapons, shots fired, etc. It's of great concern that the huge uptick at Landmark occurred after Highly Flavored was established. Well, let's just say it was mostly the bowling alley people. Well, if they came to me as district councilman and said, we want to set up shop across the street with a liquor license, I would say no. Now, when comparing April 23, and I have to be a numbers guy to a certain extent, to September of 23, that was before Highly Flavored went to Landmark. That's history. To the time Highly Flavored arrives, from October 23 to May of 24. It's just fact that we had very disturbing data. Police incident reports ballooned by some 46%. Also, the Liquor Commission has repeatedly been warned of the extremely high police call volume throughout our city. Last year alone, our police department responded to over 118,000 calls for police service citywide. So for me, given the track record of the applicant, or any of the applicants coming from Landmark wanting a liquor license across the street, the answer would be to deny those requests to approve that site application for a Class B liquor license with on-site consumption and the retail sale of alcohol for Highly Flavored 456 Fulton, Suite 186. A few years ago, Mayor, I had an applicant who wanted to put in a chain store that makes very nice pizza in a part of my district over at near Forest Hill and Gale. I believe it's now in Council Member Denise Jackson's district. And talk about pressure. All right, we're happy to have you there at that intersection. But the police just turned down the gas station. And do you have to have a liquor license? Can you maybe get to know your neighbors first in Hamilton Park in this case? But what we have before us now is we're going right into liquor. This isn't a restaurant application. I think we would all look at it differently if it were. And there could be a period of meeting the residents and so on. And then maybe if it fits in fine and there are no problems, there could be a request for a liquor license at a later date. But right now, and you know, I'm a politician. I don't like to say no to anybody. But I'm not going to say yes to something that I believe is injurious to the people in this district and in this building across the street and in our city. And that's why I'm moving to deny, as outlined.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Euler. Continued discussion. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I think that one of Mr. Sargent's objections to people objecting to him is racial discrimination. And somehow, some way, in the midst of all our discrimination, we have given licenses to relatives and to him in the past. And I don't think we became racist, in the last couple of weeks. So I don't appreciate that as a defense for him. Secondly, he owes fees, and there's something that has to be done with the lease and some other things. I think, at best, we're premature in our consideration of this. I'm not quite at the point where I would like to defer this, but I wouldn't mind hearing someone on the council ask for a deferral and defend that. Otherwise, since we have these things that are outstanding, he should be clean as a whistle when he comes here. And it seems like some of those things are in process. So, but at the moment, where things stand, I don't know that it would be. I would be in favor of Councilman Graham's motion, unless there's a motion to defer until these things are cleaned up. But I'm not willing to put forward that deferral motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. And I do want to say I didn't hear Mr. Sargent say anything related to racial discrimination. I heard him say he wanted equal opportunity, but I didn't hear what you inferred. I didn't read that in his letter, and I didn't hear that in his comments.
Well, I don't know what equal opportunity was denied him. I got an implication, but you're right. He didn't say it directly. I think we throw some terms around that everyone is supposed to know what that means, and that's what I think it means, and perhaps I'm incorrect in that, and perhaps I'm not. But anyway, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Gordon Young.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I have a question for you. Am I able to ask Mr. Sargent a question?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Sargent, could you come up, please? So thank you for being here and representing your desire to move forward. I was one of those individuals that was there at Landmark when, all of the vision was being discussed and things were being proposed, and it was a very exciting time. What happened between that and, the past few months or whatever, I'm not sure. And I'll get to my question in a second. But one of the things I do think is important is that we understand the police calls. And again, I do want to make sure that we make a fair decision, but I want to make sure that we are armed with accurate information. Now, I served as a 911 dispatcher. And when police calls are put in the CAD system, the young lady said it goes in as a general call. And unless that caller or the officer on scene has proof that that particular business or the person is associated with that business, then you cannot accurately say that the person came from Highly Flavored or was involved at Highly Flavored. And I think the mall is a great example that I often use. So if someone says there's a fight at the mall, if they don't say the fight is at Finish Line or whatever business, it goes in anyway. It's still going to go in with the same address, and the remarks may give the specific location of the incident. And even with that being said, it still does not indicate that those particular parties or that party is associated with that location. So I do think that we need to be fair in representing the data correctly. So until we know that, and maybe it is just a coincidence, or maybe this is just a hot spot, but they weren't necessarily affiliated with you. And so I want to throw that out there, but then I also want to ask you a question in terms of what your vision is for the Twin Towers location. And I say that because I heard your vision, when you started at the Landmark location.
I've always owned and operated restaurants. I want a full service restaurant. There's no bar, nightclub envisioned. There's no late night traffic with loud music or anything of that nature. It's a restaurant. It's no different than going to Texas Roadhouse. I believe Texas Roadhouse closes at 11 o'clock as well, And to speak to, your comment, when I say equal opportunity, I spoke towards, there's a bar located in the Twin Towers Mall right now. It's called Kickback. It closes at 2 a.m. It does have its own separate entrance off of Fulton Street, but in my lease agreement, everything's in place for me to operate till 11 o'clock with security that I pay for that will roam the mall before hours and during hours and after we close. I personally plan on closing the restaurant down every night. We operate Tuesday through Saturday. And like I said, I'm personally be in the kitchen, making sure that the proper management is in place, to run a successful restaurant. This is what it is. That's my vision.
So do you have a target audience or a target demographic that you want to cater to?
Not at all. I believe money is green. All money is welcome. It's no demographic or a certain audience that I'm targeting. I put out good food. I have been for years. I have over 6,000 followers on Facebook for Fry Spot. That's a big achievement. That's something to be proud of. So to answer your question, no.
Okay, and with that, I think we have to look at a lot of things here. There are a lot of layers to this. For example, is there an assumption that you're going to attract a particular type of person or audience? And with that, is that discriminatory? And then the other piece is a couple things in terms of Kickback, for example. Kickback does not have patrons that have to enter inside of the Twin Towers. So we can't necessarily use that, although that is a business there, right? And they serve alcohol. But the concern here is entering, and you've talked about how you would address that, entering that piece. And then the previous tenant, the Creve Coeur Club, they did have a liquor license, and they operated more as a restaurant, right? But it was also private. And so again, it's not like this is new to the area. It's not like there aren't even a business inside of the Twin Towers that serves alcohol, because there is. And so I want to make sure that we are armed with all the information. And then I want to ask you, here's my magic question for you. Are you willing to operate without a liquor license and focus specifically on food to begin with the closing time of 8 p.m. that's indicated on the lease?
I think that's a loaded question. And I say that to say, would I? Sure. But that would be the choice that I'm forced to make, opposed to being able to open. I'm willing to be compliant with the plan of operation, willing to be compliant with closing times. So it would be discouragement to answer your question to if I was denied, and would I want to continue operating the Twin Towers? Me personally, I wouldn't. I would love to be somewhere where I'm wanted. Right. I would love to be somewhere where I'm wanted, where I'm celebrated, where I don't have this, I would say this whole situation since being at Landmark, and leaving has been a nightmare. I honestly at this time I don't have an answer to that question. Not a exact answer, at least.
With that, I'd like to move to defer.
You move to defer until when?
Yeah, and No, I'm sorry. Do you want me to finish that
Till
sentence?
when?
Yes, until the next. First of all, I think it's going to be important to adhere to the lease agreement, which is 8 p.m., unless that is changed to 11 p.m., because we can't have the hours after your 8 p.m., but then also clear up any revenue that needs to be paid. And if there's an agreement for that, that's understandable as well. But I think it sounds like there's a misunderstanding in some areas. And then because do you have certificate of occupancy now?
Yes.
Okay. So the Twin Towers has already said you can come in and be a restaurant. The Liquor Commission said you can have the liquor license, right?
No.
Okay.
No. The Liquor Commission made a recommendation for a site application approval.
Okay, for the site application approval.
Right.
All right. And that was 3 to...
Recommendation to the council.
Okay,
It's
all
up
right.
to the council
Okay.
to decide.
Okay.
I was just going to say that as far as the lease goes, we are in conversation about that time frame. And I'm not sure which gentleman spoke. I believe it was Councilman Hayes that said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you said, if I was to get the license, get the approval, that we can place it till 8. And once our agreement was made with me and my landlord, if we choose to move it to 11, then we can adjust it then. But as of right now, we are in conversation as far as my closing time.
Okay, and with that, I just think there's and I have a couple ideas that may be helpful, and and I don't know if it's something you would want to consider. I can share that with you now, or we can talk offline.
It's completely up to you. That's fine.
It's basically that you consider going into operations without their liquor license now, contingent upon the next 6 months or 3 months, and then build from there.
Councilwoman, you want to make a deferral date?
Yes, I'd like to defer until the next council meeting. I don't know the date.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Continued discussion, Councilmember Vespa.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to say that I was not going to vote up or down because I have significant financial interest in both the residential and commercial aspects of the Twin Towers, but a deferral motion I don't think I need to abstain from. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to share some comments that I have prepared. While I appreciate the thorough information and context that's been provided on today's matter, my goal is to remain objective as possible, factoring both the petitioner and the various stakeholders of the Twin Towers. While we cannot establish a direct correlation between police calls and highly flavored, it's important to acknowledge that Landmark has faced behavioral challenges with its patrons over the past several years. I respect the efforts that Landmark has made to address these issues, and I remain hopeful that they will continue to succeed as a vital contributor to our community's quality of life and entertainment sector.
That's true.
I'll yield.
What was that second to? What was that? Oh. Okay. Pardon me?
On the deferral.
Oh, okay, yes.
I was going to ask the police chief.
So on the motion to defer, the discussion's limited to how long the deferral would be, and issues related to the deferral that might aid the council in by way of a report back. So the council has a rule on that. I think that the calling the question would still yield to the motion to defer issues that are specifically in the council's rule. Thank you.
Okay. So
what's that mean?
I mean, your question, I don't know what your question is. His question may relate to that. So, Councilman Regenbach?
My question is to the chief if the 2-week deferral will give him time to supply the information on the FOIA that was requested, because obviously there's a lot of unanswered questions out there. So I support the deferral, but I want to make sure 2 weeks is enough, or if we need to do 4 weeks.
And Counsel Hayes?
There are 18 police reports from the period of time when highly flavored was at the landmark. We'll present all those redacted both to the FOIA requester as well as counsel between now and the next meeting. Thank you.
In 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
Is that sufficient time?
2 weeks, that is sufficient time. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
Okay.
Councilman.
Okay. Okay. So we are voting on a 2-week deferral, approximately 2 weeks. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 3 nays, Seer, Graham, and Euler. Okay. Madam Clerk?
24-203 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file the month ended April 30th, 2024, unaudited financial report.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have our Finance Director here as it's time for our monthly financial report, and I'll turn it over to Director Craddy.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I'll run through the report quickly. The April report in your packet highlights that revenues are up 2.3% versus expected budget in the general fund. We have expenses up 7.9% versus expected. What I do want to call out with that is heavily influenced by how we are spending our remaining American Rescue Plan funds. So those have been being spent at a little bit faster rate than we anticipated in our model. So that is what's affecting that large increase. It's not necessarily operational changes. In terms of revenues, looking across the different revenue sources I provide, the home rule sales tax continues to be above pace for last year and in line with our budget. The state sales tax number does as well. In-state income tax also is ahead of pace for last year. The one item that we continually have talked about is personal property replacement tax. That number is still within where we had budgeted to believe that it would be. The Illinois Municipal League to put out new revenue projections that decrease that number slightly for calendar year 24, with an anticipated 15% increase in calendar year 25, and we'll deal with going into the next budget. But we were conservative in how we had budgeted personal property replacement tax during that budget process. So even though it is down, it's still within line within the budget. So our revenues in the general fund continue to look strong. And with that, I'm available for any questions that the council has.
Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Craddy, Director Craddy, thank you very much for your time this morning for meeting with me and spend an hour to go over all these different questions I had, so we can save some time tonight. But I would like for you to explain just a few things. Number one, tell us a little bit, and our constituents that are listening. Well, number one, tell us what the typo was. There was a typo on page 5, correct?
Yeah, there was. There was a typo on page 5 that says that the April amount was $10,062,394, and it says up from $10,520. Numbers got transposed. The number is $10,620,000 instead of 062. There was a typo on that number.
Thank you, sir. Question on page 6 of 10, and you just covered a little bit about the personal property replacement tax.
Yep.
We're at now 55% of last year right now. Again, tell me what you told me this morning, though, about this record so far.
Yeah, so I think the last couple of years, we had seen record numbers in what this revenue was coming in at. And the city manager and I had constantly had conversations about, this is really kind of not in the norm of what these revenues look like. So we had kind of been planning on there would be a pullback. The state did find an error in their formula for tax year 21 as well as tax year 22 that they are correcting with this pullback. That is why the anticipation going into calendar year 25 is we'll have that 15% increase, which is really just based off of that clawback amount going off the books from the state.
Explain to us again the replacement tax. Where does it go? What percentage? Things like that.
Yeah, so a majority of our personal property replacement tax, I would say probably 85% of it goes towards pensions. The remaining 15% this year has gone into the general fund. With our growth model looking at our pension obligations, we anticipate that more than likely during the 25 budget, there will be no allocation to the general fund, and it will all go towards pension obligations.
And our pension obligation the next few years, I mean, nobody knows for sure, but again, tell me what you told, or tell us what you told me this morning.
Yeah, so we
your
did receive the funding request from the police and fire pension actuaries, I believe about 3 to 4 weeks ago. The increase year over year is $2.8 million. We are seeing close to about a $500,000 a year increase over the last few years, and we anticipate not only will it continue down that path, but we will see escalation more in that 20 to 30 timeline.
Let's talk just a little bit. It's not really, I don't see that as your responsibility, but I know you have all the answers, so I'm going to ask you. Talk to us a little bit about the Civic Center, the outstanding amount left. Maybe you can tell us about their capital investment plan. I'm very concerned about our responsibility as a city on operation also, so maybe you can cover what our responsibility are as far as helping the Civic Center with operation.
Yeah, so in terms of Civic Center operation, we do have the existing agreement with them for the hotel, restaurant, amusement taxes. They receive the remaining amount post debt service obligations for the Civic Center as well as some other parties. The information in the packet looks specifically at the loan that we have with the Civic Center. So the Civic Center received a $25 million grant for capital improvements at their facility. Because they're a smaller organization, we have been cash flowing some of their projects because they're looking at putting out $7 to $8 million sometimes in a specific quarter. And so the remaining amount that's still outstanding is that second quarter allotment that they're in the process of requesting the reimbursement from DCO at the end of the month.
So when are we becoming responsible for operation?
In terms of kind of the operations of
their cash flow for operation.
So within the agreement, the clause kicks in at $1.5 million of cash reserve on their end, which really is to maintain their daily operations instead of looking at their capital.
The last question on this one here, my colleague, Councilman Allen, requested some update a few meetings ago, on the negotiation. And again, it's not your responsibility, but Mr. Manager, are we going to receive I've not heard. I don't know if Mr. Allen's requests were responded to, but
Yeah, we shared with you the response from the Corporation Council for the Civic Center Authority. The negotiations are continuing and ongoing, and that's the status that we have.
Okay. The last question, last page, Mr. Craddy. Talk to us a little about the audit. I understand Clifton, Larson, and Allen is responsible for our audit. How much they charge us? How long they've been doing our audit? I know we're late again this year. Is it time to go out for RFP? I don't want to put you on the spot tonight, but maybe you can talk to us a little about the audit.
I am happy to report that we are progressing ahead of where last year's schedule was. The city does have the draft of the audit that we're reviewing, and I do anticipate that we will have the final draft in July, is my anticipation. The city has been with Clifton, Larson, Allen, I believe, since around 2016 as the city's auditor. The contract does terminate after this agreement. We potentially could go out to RFP looking at, deciding on whether or not we want to do an audit rotation, which I think is usually in the best interest of communities to do an audit rotation. So it's something we'll be considering over the coming months, and we'll bring something to council forward with that.
Last thing, it's not really a question, it's just a comment from our conversation this morning. Would it be possible for you to add the pension line item on the last page, since it's going to be a huge item moving forward and it's going up quite rapidly in the next few years? So would that be possible to add that line back?
You did point out to me that the overall budget is not on the fund level sheet, which is the last page on here. So we will add that so council has a perspective of what the overall budget is for the year.
Thank you very much, Director Craddy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Madam Clerk?
I believe we need a motion to receive and file
Thank you.
that item.
Please, moved by Councilmember Sears, seconded by Councilmember Allen to receive and file. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Director Craddy. Madam Clerk?
24-204 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to receive and file a communication regarding the allowance of backyard chickens in the City of Peoria.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to actually turn it over to our Corporation Counsel as well as our Assistant Director of Community Development, Leah Allison, who will help to facilitate this discussion.
Who's going to start? Council Hayes?
I'll start.
Okay.
I'm sure you'd all rather hear from Ms. Allison, but so our council rules and our code allows citizens to propose matters directly to our Planning and Zoning Committee. That's what occurred here with this proposal. Citizens came forward and suggested that we start looking at allowing and permitting backyard poultry or chickens. So the process was that this matter was submitted to the Planning and Zoning Committee based on the proposal from the citizens. That hearing was heard, and you've got a summary of that. Just by way of discussing how staff looks at this proceeding, you might recall that we did a number of interactions with council to arrive at how we would proceed on short-term rentals. So from here going forward, we anticipate a conversation tonight with the council, inform you and answer your questions about the proposal from these citizens. If the council determines that there's going to be no further action, you can make that motion and we can end the matter at that point tonight. If the council has additional items that they'd like to see or have staff put to task to build out a proposed ordinance and a regulatory scheme, budget impact, financial impact, staffing levels, things like that, staff would be happy to undertake that, but needs direction from council to do so. Once we complete that task, we'd present it back to council like we did with the short-term rentals. And once council's comfortable with that, if they chose to proceed down that path, it would go back through planning and zoning for their recommendation to council and then back to council for approval. So tonight, two major issues to deal with after the discussion. Do we proceed any further or not? And if we do, give staff some time to get back to you. In speaking with Ms. Allison earlier today, we would tell you that it's a substantial undertaking. 60 to 90 days, we'd be back to council with some sort of form of an ordinance and a regulatory scheme and the financial impact and that type of thing. As you can see from the letter from the county administrator, there's a significant amount of staffing, development of where the enforcement activity and licensing activity would take place. And so there's a number of issues for us to deal with. Staff didn't want to make, I didn't want to have staff make that substantial commitment of time and resources without direction from council to do so. Thank you. And then on the substantive issues, we'll turn to our Deputy Director. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Assistant
Madam Mayor.
Director Allison.
Thank you. Corporation Counsel Hayes really, summed it up very well. Thank you. I provided in your packet that letter from Peoria County for you to review. I tried to summarize the major points in your council cover memo. The points that they bring to your attention are concern for costs of increased staffing that may be generated with additional enforcement calls, costs that could be incurred with the physical structure of their current facility is not designed to house chickens, and they would want to, in a humane way, provide that housing, so there could be the potential for changes or upgrades to their physical setting to house any chickens that would have to be brought to their facility. They also, touched on public health, sanitation, making sure that if chickens are brought to residential neighborhoods, that there's safety measures and guidelines that keep everybody safe with health and sanitation. And that can be in the form of spacing and minimum lot sizes and maximum number of chickens. So they brought that to your attention for consideration. Some concerns that they want you to keep in mind. As Corporation Counsel Hayes mentioned, you have a choice. If you want us to do more research, we certainly will, and bring it back to you. If you feel that further action, that's something you can consider as well tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm just looking at some of the materials on the desk here, and I'm curious, is this a staff proposal? It has the city's logo and says City of Peoria at the top and doesn't say it's from someone else, so I was just curious if it was
That was not distributed by staff. I'm not sure what that document is, but it was not distributed.
If I may, that was distributed by one of the citizens in the audience.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think we have a couple of citizens who would like to address this. I believe James Kemper and perhaps his colleague would like to address it as well, but Mr. Kemper?
Okay, before we go there, I want to ask whether there's any more questions from council for Assistant Director Allison. Councilmember Valpula.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a very interesting topic, I would say. It's more like allowing backyard chickens, the feathered friends, to become I would say, hoping to revolutionize the urban farming in Peoria. I mean, this is a very well thought out book. I've gone through it. I like the way it is written. And then I also admire the people who presented this data. And the only thing that is not mentioned in this one is like the number of eggs that each hen gives in a month. So basically each hen gives you 20 to 30 eggs. And if you're allowing 5 chicken, then you'll have 100 to 150 eggs per family. So that is the positive side of it. But again, the reason why I wanted to ask you is you mentioned something, you touched base something on the increased calls for service. And you also said there would be additional personnel to handle complaints. And probably that could cause a potential strain on the local government resources. We are just, it's a tip of an iceberg, just like Corporation Counsel said, that we have to do a due diligence before we do that. I also don't know if there is a procedure to address safety risks there is a mention saying that they will not cause any diseases, but then chickens are supposed to create bird flu, avian influenza, salmonella, and zoonosis. I don't know if you have a plan or education, what happens when there is an outburst. I don't see that. And the second one, quarantine measures during an outburst. How do we prepare ourselves for that? I don't think it is very well thought out. And then also, the last one is the humane conditions. We don't know what to do if someone doesn't want a hen. It was not thought out yet. So, I mean, noise and order, there is a mention on that, but to me, it is a good idea, but at the same time, we need to do a lot more work on that before even, thinking through that this is a good idea or bad idea. Because I don't know how much burden we are going to take as a city addressing this one. Rest of all is fine. Everything is fair. But then I don't know where and how much energy we need to spend on this one. And I would love to see your thoughts are, if you wanted to work more, do some research and get back. That is my take on it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Corporation Counsel, I'm a little confused. This particular item, the item is to receive and file these reports. Am I correct that if we want to go into this at some length and start asking the staff to bring us information, shouldn't that be under new business? I mean, we don't have any action item on this item. It's just procedural. I'm not.
So as I mentioned, our code allows citizens to make a proposal directly to our Planning and Zoning Commission. That's what's occurred here. Staff has taken no action to investigate these matters or develop materials. I have not seen the document that Dr. Vilpula was referencing or that was distributed. That's not a city document despite its appearances, and so I don't know what's in it. It's my view that our procedures in our ordinances anticipate that council would give direction to staff what to do. So either it's received and filed and staff need to take no further action, or it's received and filed and staff needs to report back on the aspects that Dr. Valpula outlined. Health, sanitation, enforcement, what the ordinance is going to say, how we're going to approach it. So staff hasn't undertaken that effort because we're awaiting some direction from council to do so. We've scripted these motions for how to end the conversation tonight for one of your colleagues. So if I could assist anyone else in making the motion, I'd be happy to. But we anticipated a discussion tonight to get the sense of the will of the council on whether to proceed or not, and then fashion a motion to give staff direction to do so.
My question is rather nitpicky. Okay, shouldn't that discussion, et cetera, be under new business? I mean, the only thing here is to receive and file. If we want to talk about this and direct staff to do this or that, shouldn't that be under new business?
Well,
it's just
yes, as a technical matter, the code doesn't give guidance on this. But if someone wants to make the motion under new business, that would be fine. But because we're dealing with the matter right now on the first reading, or on the point we're at, we can dispose of that in that matter because it's related.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Additional questions? Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I remember when this came up about a year ago, and I just couldn't fathom how. Well, let me back up. My mind went back to, I think it was 2010 when the city made significant cuts to the staff, code enforcement, public works, police department. And I think there were also some other administrative folks who lost their jobs. And so, we have been dealt with consolidation. And I know as a First District Council person, my district is, I'm told we've got the largest number of inspectors, which is 3. But I'm going to tell you, even as a council person, I oftentimes wear code enforcement hats. And while they do a fantastic job, I believe that they are often taxed in terms of their duties and responsibilities, their inability to keep up with the demands of code enforcement, public works, and they do a fantastic job given the circumstances they've been placed in which to work over the last 10 or 12 years. I cannot imagine in good conscience how we would even consider doing something like this, given the magnitude of code enforcement and public safety issues that we're already dealing with. That's my question, and I don't know how we would pay for something like this. And let me, Mayor, I've gotten calls from residents with concerns about, I don't know what they're called. They remind me of beavers. We've got all kinds of wildlife in the city already, some of which have eaten foundations of homes. And people inquire about how they are expected to deal with this. So to throw chickens in the mix would be an enormous undertaking, in my estimation, and I could not in good conscience do this to city staff, given the burdens they already have to deal with. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've had people bring this topic up to me several times in the last couple years, and I'm happy to have this discussion tonight. But I think the thing that gives me immediate pause is the letter from Scott Sorrell, the county administrator, because as you recall, PCAPs, our animal control, is something that we contract out to the county, and that's a substantial cost to us as it is. So reading his take on it, which I assume was relatively quickly compiled as well, since the timing on all this has been kind of accelerated, I think we really need to take a step back here. It's easy to say that they allow this in Chicago or Champaign or Naperville. You can name several cities that do that, but the fine print is where some of the devil is in the detail, as they say. And in those 3 cities I just referenced, the city's building and code enforcement departments take care of this. And as my colleague just stated, as a district council member, I get calls all the time, send code enforcement out. We frankly don't have enough code enforcement, and it's very complaint driven as it is. And it's very, this would be an incredible additional burden on them, to say the least. Another interesting comment from the PCAPS folks is that already this year they have had 12 complaints about chickens in the city of Peoria. And, 12, that's not very many, but they're not allowed. And we're already getting complaints about it. So that's something to take note of, I think. The costs that would be incurred just to update the PCAPS facility or establish a new facility at Public Works, or who knows where we would do that. We just heard from our finance director about the dire condition that the budget's going to be in as soon as the ARPA funding goes away. So are we really prepared to spend another $400,000 or $500,000 to build a facility to control this? And not to be a conspiracy guy or anything, but the bird flu and the diseases that are associated with animals, all animals, is something that needs to be considered. And how would that be regulated? We would have to get the health department involved in that. So that's another intergovernmental agreement that doesn't come free, obviously. So I would love to be convinced that this is the cool, hip thing to do, because it is, but I'm really concerned about the costs and the long-term implications that it's going to have in some of our heritage neighborhoods. So that's all I have for now. I'll sit back and clearly listen, but I need to be convinced.
Thank you. Councilmember Vespa? Sorry about that. There you go.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right. So, Assistant Director Allison, I look at the cities that are listed. It doesn't seem that a city in Peoria County, village or town, or a city in Peoria County already allows backyard chickens. Is that true?
I believe you're correct.
Okay. So then it would make sense that the county, in our next intergovernmental agreement, would try to assess us basically the costs of taking on the burden in the animal welfare shelter of additional chickens. And, I know if we were to license chickens, it would probably be responsible people that are getting chickens. But, just like with cats and dogs, you can get one and then change your mind, and you take them back to the shelter. And, the letter from Mr. Sorrell mentioned that there are currently chickens being housed next to barking dogs. They don't have a separate facility for them. I think that's inhumane as it is. I think we're a pretty densely populated, city, people living pretty close with each other. I have concerns, especially considering we've seen complaints here in council about there being rats because neighbors aren't taking out their garbage. I think, with chickens in the backyard, you have to be very on point, and people can do that. People can be very good at cleaning up after their chickens, preparing for the winter. It's a very significant investment, too. It can be done, but if it's not always done properly, it will be, to a degree, a burden on us, and I think that might necessitate a high licensure fee if we were to start licensing these out, which runs counter to the argument that people make that they should be doing this to self-sustain for feeding themselves and their families. Well, it's going to be very expensive to get started. I would like, if we're going to do this, make sure both sides, both neighbors on each side of a piece of property are okay with it, affirmative consent. I think that would be important. Because I certainly wouldn't want to wake up and know that there's a chicken coop 10 feet from my house. So, is it impossible to do this? I don't think it's impossible, but there would be a lot of work to do, and I do have substantial concerns. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Assistant Director Allison, in any of the preliminary findings, did you all actually talk to any of the municipalities that are mentioned here that have this ordinance on the books, and maybe just get any feedback from them of how it's been going from an enforcement standpoint, or any type of burden or opportunity has presented itself since they implemented the ordinance?
I did have the opportunity, just by happenstance, to talk to East Peoria, and their program is a pilot program as a special use, and they haven't had any significant application. Another conversation I had was actually with the city of Washington, which is not on this list, but they had adopted ordinances for allowing chickens at some point in the past, and actually most recently retracted their allowance. So they took a step back and said, we don't want chickens anymore. Just felt that the process was a special use process. For whatever reason, they just felt that an urban farming was not appropriate for their city and chose to prohibit that. Now, if there's any that are there, they're grandfathered at this point in time. But that's the only two conversations that I've had, just real quick conversations about two close municipalities.
No, thank you. And I know that, again, we're at the very beginning of this, and I think the conversation tonight is to determine if staff is going to invest additional time, and I'm sure you'll get more of those testimonies and narratives. Where I'm at on this matter is, one, I think it's important that our citizens feel seen, heard, and their opinions are validated. Now, am I going to go to Menards and build a chicken coop if this passes sometime in the future? Absolutely not. My wife's not going to even let me get a puppy. But I do think, though, it's important that we have the entire picture. I think Councilman Vespa and Councilman Riggenbach really pointed out a lot of nuances that are still very vague of what we need to know. Now, I do want to be very respectful of staff's time. I know you all have a lot on your plates, but I do think, though, that this is worth investigating just so that way our citizens do feel that their petition brought forth was thoroughly vetted and we did our due diligence. I would be in support, or at least consider supporting a pilot of some sort, because I think that allow us to evaluate, demonstrate a proof of concept to see, is this worth investing more? Whether that is some type of lottery system where we would award so many permits, maybe per district, to truly evaluate this is something that we truly want to play in Peoria or not. So that's just, my initial thoughts on this. I know that there's more conversation around the horseshoe, but I'm intrigued with the thought, but I do respect my colleagues and Administrator Sorrell as well, too, and talking to some of our colleagues over at the county within the health department and PCAPS. There's a lot of nuances that we would have to iron out in order for this to be implemented and ultimately successful. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Assistant Director Allison? Thank you, Assistant Director. And I'm going to ask anyone commenting to restrict your comments to 5 minutes or less, preferably less. Councilmember Kelly, did you want to comment? Okay. All right, and if you would just give us your name and then you can proceed with your comment.
Absolutely. My name is Kimberly Giraldo and I live in the Uplands. And I just want to start kind of talking about the nitty-gritty. I have called a lot of these folks, a lot of these different jurisdictions, and so I want to give you guys some numbers and what it would really look like to have chickens and talk about some of the issues that might come up. First off, chickens in urban settings is very normal. Across the nation, most major cities already allow backyard chickens, and I've listed many, and we've talked about those here today. When you look at the top 150 largest cities in Illinois, they all accept, 71% of them allow backyard chickens. And the community thinks that Peoria should join them. We've had tremendous community support for this initiative. We have almost 2,000 signatures on change.org and hundreds of supportive comments online. Now, we suggest that we should model our proposal after that of Champaign, Illinois. They've been doing this for almost 13 years now with very little issues. And any time that we talk here, we'll be referencing them sort of as a model because we have a similar size population. So we're going to go over what that kind of looks like, and you've got tons of a packet there, and the yellow one is actually our proposal, and then the rest is kind of some facts and figures. And we've also looked at the response from PCAPS and the health department, and we wanted to make sure that all of that was taken into consideration as well, because we want to make this as easy as possible for the staff and the city to put together. Now, we understand that there may be some concerns from the community, and the majority of those are basically just based in misinformation, and so I wanted to go over the top 3 right now. Noise. People think that chickens are noisy. They think that they imagine the crowing at 5 a.m. waking up the neighborhood. which is why we're only asking for hens. Hens are generally quiet, topping out at 50 to 60 decibels, which is significantly lower than common urban sounds like barking dogs and lawnmowers. Now, some people might say they stink, right? I don't want a stinky chicken next door. Well, neither do I. None of us do. But thankfully, a flock of 5 chickens, which is the max that we're asking for, produces much waste as a medium-sized dog. So very minimal. But what about predators? Most predators in urban areas are opportunistic. So our proposal already includes things like feed storage and coop construction as a way to deter predators. Again, all of this is included in the Champaign ordinance, which has been successful for over 13 years. So what could this look like for us? If we went with the model that Champaign does, they have a coop license, and that's done through the zoning and planning. And they want to make sure that you have a certain amount of setback from the property lines and all of that. And then enforcement and concerns are complaint-based. So public nuisance tickets will help fund the enforcement, making the system self-funded and community-driven. Now, this all sounds great, but how many chickens are we dealing with? That was a question, right? How many chickens? Are we going to be overrun with chickens in the street? Are there going to be chickens running across the road? Champaign issues 5 to 10 new licenses a year. We're not talking about thousands of chickens. 5 to 10 new licenses. So realistically, the strain of our permitting department would be very minimal year over year. As one of the council members said, there is an investment to setting up a chicken coop and going through the process of getting a permit. So there is a little bit of a barrier to entry there. And what about animal control? Now, as we mentioned earlier, we see about a dozen chickens a year in our facilities. And PCAPS is worried about what those numbers look like. So I spoke to animal control in Champaign. Let's see what they had to say. They reported seeing only 3 to 4 chickens a year for the entire county. And they were very quick to tell me, we have very little issues with permit holders. And I heard similar responses from several other cities, and that's one of the back pages of one of your notebooks there. And that makes me wonder, would our numbers go down if there was a legal pathway to chicken ownership? Because the ones that we're already seeing are already here. So I'm going to skip through here a little bit, but what I want to do is I want to ask for a compromise. There is a lot of details and a lot of nuances. And I know that it's so much easier to just say no. So what I'm asking is, let's try a pilot. Give us 100 licenses. Let's see how many chickens we actually see in the shelter, how much we're actually putting a strain or not putting a strain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there someone else?
Hi, my name is Andrea Shanowski. I am, in addition to being a longtime resident of Peoria, I'm a small business owner and a healthcare provider. So I am very familiar with some of the concerns you have regarding disease. I did want to first start by addressing some of your concerns and questions that you had. So I wanted to start with addressing the disease concerns. If you look in the packet that was brought to you from the Zoning and Planning Commission, we did have letters not only from PCAPS but also the health department with some guidance as to what we should include inside of the licensure or the ordinance changes regarding not only the distance from property lines and other residences, but as well as gardens and other things too. I do think that's something that can be addressed and put in the ordinance. One of the other concerns was, again, the sanitation. Again, those are in there as well, and that could be something that could be included in the ordinance changes. I know we had a question about the number of eggs. Typically, chickens lay about 300 eggs a year for each chicken, so that's to address that question there. I did want to kind of go over what I thought would be a good place to start if we are going to look into changing an ordinance or to draft that. I know that to make this work, we do need to make sure that the City Council can draft something that will address clear regulations and also enforcement to minimize issues and additional demands on PCAPS, while also balancing humane treatment of chickens and the safety of our community due to those disease concerns. With it in mind, I do want to kind of go over what we already have. We did give out packets to you guys so you'd have some information as to what we're proposing and also have a starting point. So our current ordinance states that except as provided in the zoning ordinance set out in Appendix B of this code, Section 4.5, all farm animals, including but not limited to members of swine, ovine, bovine, caprine, and equine families, poultry, and rabbits shall be prohibited. Then right after that, we immediately have a path to legal ownership for rabbits. We're asking for a similar addition for chickens. So obviously our proposed ordinance is going to be modeled after Champaign, which again has been having chickens for over 12 years successfully with very little issues. One of the suggestions that I did have, since we are proposing more of a licensure system, is that we would propose as part of that a map, very similar to how you would propose fencing on your property, where it would have numbers and also sizing of the coop and run, as well as relation to property lines, neighboring residences, as well as any gardens in the area as well. That application for licensure should be yearly, and that should also be renewed as well annually. We are asking that potentially if we do propose and pass this, or at least start drafting it, that we could potentially do a trial of no more than 100 licensures. As Kim mentioned, typically Champaign gets about 5 to 10 a year maximum, so it would be very minimal even if we did a lower number as a trial. She did mention already we are asking for 5 hens, so again, very small amount, not very loud, there's no roosters in there. We did have also some stipulations on property lines as well as those stipulations with guidelines from the health department as well. Now, one of the things that is a big concern for a lot of people is that disease management. As part of that permit, we would have a chicken basics information as well as a Defend the Flock workbook that would detail all of what needs to be done to prevent disease, as well as any concerns for pass-through, as well as how to deal with avian flu if there is an issue or an outbreak in the flock. And we would also have in-person courses available. Another big concern you have was current PCAPs and dealing with the chickens. We have not only volunteered and actually given and talking to Becky Spencer, we have donations from the community that have actually volunteered to fund the purchase of an 8-chicken coop that we would donate to PCAP. So they would already have a new facility. There wouldn't be additional budget complaints because we would provide that for them. We've also partnered with local chicken rescues that have volunteered to take on any chickens as well as the feed costs from those. So we've provided chicken coop as well as care for any that need to be surrendered or any that need to be rehoused if they don't fit at PCAPs. Thank you for your time and consideration.
You're welcome. Person?
James Kepper, 1630 West Parkside Drive. I am a neighbor of Kimberly. Madam Mayor, City Council members, thank you so much for letting us talk about this today. I never thought that I'd come here and talk about chickens. When I first heard about the chickens, I thought, well, who should I call about this? Who should I get information? So I called my daughter. She lives in Chicago. She's kind of hip. Lives in Bucktown. I'm sure you guys know where Bucktown is. And I said, hey, they're talking about having backyard chickens in Peoria. What do you think about this? She goes, Dad, you are way behind the times. Come on. So she makes some ruckus. She starts making this noise. I'm like, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going outside. I said, why are you doing that? She takes a photo on her phone and sends it to me. There's chickens literally across the alley where she lives in Bucktown. And this is not some shady area of Bucktown. This is a really nice area. The homes are at least 500,000 to 2.5 million in that area. And there's chickens there. Somehow they make that work. It's not some weird, bizarre thing like a lot of people think it is. It's a growing trend that is kind of hip. It's cool. I want our city to be hip and cool. I want people to be able to, Portland or Denver, Colorado, wherever it is, look at Peoria, Illinois and say, hey, that's kind of a cool, fun place to live. I'd like to live there. I know quite a few people on Mawson Avenue that have come here, and Chuck knows them well as well, and they really dig our vibe. They love Peoria, and I'd like to give them other reasons for that. Earlier I heard Councilman Vespa and Councilman Allen talk about a pilot program and also about having have your neighbors sign off before doing this. I completely agree with both of those, and I think that's something we should consider. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Ali, City Council members, my name is Sandra Crow, and I'm here to oppose chickens. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, I'll start over. My name is Sandra Crow. Thank you, Rita, Mayor Rita Ali and the council for letting me address you. I'm here to oppose chickens in the city. I feel like, a lot of people aren't even aware that this is happening. I found out by mistake. And, anybody I've talked to since is just pretty, upset about it. So I think you are going to have some problems with, people. I've lived at my address since 1987. And I worry about, I've talked to people in Washington, and they said it was chaos. They were so glad when it was over. They said it actually affected selling homes. Because people, if there was chickens, they didn't want to buy a house next to a chicken, something you have to look at. And I think that's a question that should matter. The biggest problem, if you do much research, the biggest problems with urban chickens is noise, odor, pests, and waste control. They can say that that's not a concern, but it is. And my concerns are that every year, or every other year, I get a letter from the city saying that the area where I live has a rat problem, okay, and people aren't picking up their dog poop. So, although I've not ever seen a rat, I have abstained from having a compost pile because we obviously have a rat problem where I live. So, I don't want to draw these predators into my flower gardens. And will chicken poop not be a huge draw to these predators? And it takes a 5 to 6 foot fence to keep the predators out. And I know for a fact that we have a raccoon problem in my area. And also, I think people are romanticizing the idea of having chickens, and they're probably ill-prepared to take on the responsibility. I'm an Iowa farm girl, so I know a whole lot about chickens, a whole lot about livestock. And yes, they're noisy, and yes, they smell. And there are a lot of costs involved in raising chickens, probably $70 to $100 a month for 5 chickens, not including a chicken coop and the fence they're going to need. And does zoning allow for this? I mean, people are getting turned down for building a shed in their backyard, so where do chicken coops come in here? And it's my understanding that they can put this chicken coop within 10 feet of my property. 10 feet? That's not very far. Okay, and also, will people do any better job of picking up their chicken poop than they do their dog poop? Will we find garbage bags strewn along the interstate in disposal of the chicken droppings? And if they don't keep their little farm clean, what will be my options and peaceful enjoyment of my property? Despite what the advocates are saying, chicken poop smells and chickens are noisy. Most cities who have rescinded their chicken zoning, it was due to disputes in the neighborhoods. We have many tight neighborhoods with small fences, and so chickens could actually get over a fence. And there's always a risk of disease. In 2020, there was salmonella breakouts linked to backyards, resulting in the hospitalization of 333 people, with 24% of ill people being children under 5. So yes, there is a risk with disease. Let's see, in other areas around Peoria, East Peoria has rescinded theirs, and they're looking at, considering a pilot project for conservation zones on the periphery of the property. That might be a better thing to look at for Peoria. I simply lack that faith that people would take the responsibility to adequately care for or handle the costs of raising chickens. Chickens produce less than 1 egg per 2 hens, for 3 to 4 years. So basically, okay, I'm about out of time here, but I just ask that you look carefully at all these things and consider the people who don't want chickens. I mean, I don't know that I want a chicken coop next to me, you know, and I don't want, if I ever wanted to sell my home, I wouldn't have to worry about that either. And so I just think it's something you need to, you know, there would have to be neighbor.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't even know this was on the agenda, but I wanted to speak about it because I'm the president of the union that the code enforcement people are a part of. And when Councilwoman Jackson and Councilman Riggenbach both say that code enforcement is understaffed, that's an understatement. Code enforcement was probably the hardest department in the city hit by the budget cuts, the unnecessary budget cuts that went through in 08, 10, 18. And as a result, we have code enforcement people that are covering twice as much territory as they did before, sometimes 3 times as much territory as they did before. And the city prides itself on the fact that it's gotten done more with less, because that's what cities do. But for my members, it means they work longer, they work more, they cannot get to things. And so the concern that adding more stuff to their workload is a valid one. And I think it's one that you should investigate by letting city staff come up with proposals and what this would mean and things like that. And for the people that support this, I want to point out that one of the reasons why this might not be able to be possible is because the city of Peoria won't fund public services to the way that Champaign does, or the way Elgin does, or the way Kankakee does, or the way Rockford does, where they have government agencies that can handle these things. I deal with PCAPs every day in my job as a 911 dispatcher. They have office hours, 8 to 5. If you have an animal emergency after 5, it's very, very limited on what they'll come out for. They won't come out for stray dogs. They won't come out for a dog roaming the streets. They won't come out for wild animals that are not in the main resident areas of your house. Like a raccoon gets in your basement, they won't come out for that. So these intergovernmental agreements that we signed that took public services that we provided and gave them to the county, maybe we need to investigate if that's the best bang for the buck as opposed to when we did it ourselves. And so those concerns are valid, and my members, I will weigh in with my members as to what they think about that. But I think the bigger picture is we've admitted that we don't fund public services to the level where we can do anything more than what we're doing. And we admit that we can't even do what we're doing now. And that, to me, is the far bigger problem than whether or not my partner and my daughter live in Rogers Park in Chicago. There are people with chicken coops in the area. And if they take care of them, it's fine. There was a neighbor who didn't, and it was a problem. But that's the same with dogs. You know, are there people that do this diligently for 20 years and they raise hens? Yes. Are there people that do this because this was the latest thing they saw on an Instagram thing, and then 6 months later when they see a new Instagram thing, that's what they switch to? Absolutely. So I'm agnostic on whether or not chickens are allowed in Peoria. I am very much not agnostic about the members of my union being asked to do more things with less money and the same number of people. And we continue and continue and continue to do that when staffing levels now are a fraction of what they were in 2008, and we have a larger city where we're asking us to do more stuff all the time. So if you can make it work out, I'm for it. But if this is just another thing of like you said, Councilwoman Jackson, usually you have a code enforcement and 2 aides. So if that code enforcement officer is now asked to regulate the chicken coops as well as all the other stuff, and there's not another code person brought in, that's not fair to my members. That's not fair to the people of the city of Peoria, and it's not fair to the idea that public services should be provided at an efficient and high-quality way. So, thank you.
Next person.
Hello, my name is Natasha Zinda, and I am a small business owner, and I also live in the Uplands, which is one of those historic neighborhoods you guys were speaking on earlier. Legacy neighborhood, I believe it was called. So obviously I'm here in favor, hence the colorful outfit. I'm here to speak on some things that really haven't been touched on, and I hope y'all bear with me. I'm a little bit nervous. Today, I stand before you guys to discuss an initiative that has the power to transform our community in profound and lasting ways. Backyard chicken initiatives, who'd have thought? While it may seem like a small-scale solution with kind of big-scale nuanced problems that I feel like may seem bigger than they actually are, the implications of promoting backyard chickens for food sovereignty and racial equity are vast and deeply significant. It is essential, particularly for our city of Peoria, Illinois, and how it can address issues of food deserts, impact crime rates, and enhance mental health. Food sovereignty is about the right for communities to control their own food systems, including their methods of production and distribution. It's a movement towards local sustainable food sources that empower residents and reduce dependency on external and often inequitable food supply chains, often since COVID, unreliable as well. For Peoria, this means enabling all residents, regardless of income or race, to have access to fresh, nutritious food. Racial equity in food access is crucial. In Peoria, there are stark disparities that exist between different neighborhoods. According to recent statistics, because I know we have a lot of numbers fans, approximately 19.6% are significant racial disparities. For African Americans, it's nearly 40%. These economic inequities manifest in limited access to healthy food options, which are often more prevalent in predominantly white and more affluent neighborhoods. Backyard chicken initiatives offer a step towards closing the gap by providing a means for self-sufficiency and access to high-quality things. Food deserts, which Peoria once became in 2009, have limited access to affordable and nutritious foods. Hence all the Dollar Generals, little markets, they sell you a bunch of prepackaged stuff with a bunch of preservatives. Those things make people really unhealthy. They cause a lot of health issues, backs up our health system, and on and on and on. It climbs. Everything is kind of related. Approximately 30% of Peoria's residents live in a food desert now, impacting their ability to maintain healthy diets. By promoting backyard chickens, we mitigate the effects of these food deserts. It's the beginning. Things like the wonderful amount of community gardens that we have do great work too, especially with our unhoused community. Chickens are relatively easy to care for, and they provide a reliable source of food. This can be particularly beneficial for low-income families who struggle to afford food. Studies have shown a correlation between community engagement and positive activities and reduction in crime rates. Peoria's crime rates are wild. I'm from a very small town in Mississippi. I moved here 2 years ago with a hope and a dream to live in a really progressive and kind place, and I have loved living here. When individuals invest their time and effort into caring for where their food comes from, they also invest their time and effort into their community. The way that we're all being civically engaged right now, it helps build and foster those types of relationships, things that I know that you as City Council probably cherish, even though we do tend to wax a little poetic at times. Moreover, vibrant, engaged communities experience lower crime rates and lower substance abuse rates as well, because they foster environments where neighbors look out for each other and they build strong social networks. The hunger and income gaps in Peoria are stark. 20% of the residents here are below the poverty line and are experiencing food access issues, with 10% of those being children. I really think if you guys are looking into this, you really look at it from like a top-down approach, a pilot program, access for us to be able to donate and give excess eggs to the porch pantry, and things that really provide and give to our community. The people that are looking at this and the people that will invest in this are very much people that are community-minded and will do the right thing. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Council and Madam Mayor. I am coming to speak to you because I am a fan of backyard chickens, and that's why I'm vehemently opposed to the petition as it stands. I had addressed a letter to Council at Large and Madam Mayor and my councilman Chuck Graham, because I don't think the petition is a serious petition. The petition calls for a chicken coop to be no closer than 10 feet from the neighbors. And if you can imagine, say, where Councilwoman Dr. Bernice Gordon Young is sitting, if that's where she was sleeping, would she really want a chicken coop where Councilman Euler is sitting? Or if Councilman Grayub, his bedroom window was only 10 feet from Councilman Kelly, I think that the feces and the animal waste and the animal feed are going to draw cockroaches and rats like a magnet. I live at 331 Fulton Apartment, 331 Fulton Apartment 1107 across the street. I have been fighting an intractable poop problem that has been persistent for the better part of, I don't know, 2 decades. And just when I think I've got it solved, we've got mutt mitts dispensed in my building, and we've got most of my neighbors on board to pick up poop. Trust and believe there are 2 or 3 who will make things miserable for everyone. We even credit to Manager Urick for finding funding for the community mini grants. One of the mini grants was to pick up poop on the plaza because poop is a problem. Contrary to popular belief, yes, it does spread disease. You have a biologist extraordinaire here in Councilman Vespa. Ask him exactly what was the spreader of the plague. Never mind bird flu. I think that if allowed, it would have to be permitted, and just like East Peoria, I saw that the disingenuous petition that was circulated online implied that East Peoria allowed chickens. They don't. They have precisely 10 for a population of 23,000 people. Peoria proper is a city of what, 115,000 people? That is a really densely urban area to bring in a lot of feces, a lot of feed, a lot of food waste, a lot of feathers, especially in places that are already experiencing problems with rodents. I hear that it's been pitched as a way to feed our families. It's going to cost somebody a couple, $2,000-3,000 before they get their first egg. The expenses, chicken math, the expenses for feed, the expenses of additional electricity, running extension cords out to the garage to heat the water so it doesn't freeze. This is not something that's going to solve a food desert problem. This is a very expensive hobby if someone wants to take it on. And I think it quickly can become a nuisance if not managed properly. I think that the petition as it stands should be denied, and without enforcement, where it's not just a matter of fining someone if you become a nuisance for your neighbors and they need to start paying for pest control because you're bringing rats and cockroaches into the backyard of everyone. I think that the consideration needs to be taken that permits will be remanded or taken away if you can't keep things clean and you end up being a nuisance for your neighbors. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is Alex Carmona. Moved here from Colorado about 5 years ago. I don't really want to stand up here and talk to you about chicken stats or anything like that. We had chickens. They're easy to care for. You can find a lot of different information on both sides, but I want to come at this from a different approach. My family owned chickens in 3 different homes throughout our city back in Colorado. The simple permitting process only required obtaining consent from our immediate neighbors. I'm here to remind the council that issues concerning private property and mutual agreements between consulting adults should not fall under the purview of government control or regulation when natural rights are not being violated. I've heard a lot of concerns from everybody around here, valid concerns, of course, about the lack of enforcement and oversight the city is capable of at this time. I'm here to remind the council that it is not here to act as a paternalistic body that has to watch over its citizens at all times. That a free society need not look up to its rulers and ask permission for the right of property when it is already outlined by the supreme law of the land. The council need not concern itself with overwatch of its citizens when there are already processes in place that are built into our system to adjudicate disputes between neighbors and individuals. There's a petition. There's a lot of people that are for this, some that aren't for it. And I would just say that recommend this to at least move forward to do further research would be advised if you're looking at this from a governmental standpoint and from a standpoint of you all as leaders listening to your community. Thank you.
Christine Bear Kemper. I want to thank my husband, James Kemper, for speaking. I'd be amiss if I didn't apologize for my attire. Just left the Peoria Pro-Am where we did bring 285 people into Peoria to support Children's Hospital, and these people are actually like spending their money in the Peoria County, so I'm really excited about that. James, and there's been a lot of things that have been spoken, but first I want to acknowledge everyone that took the time to just have a phone call with me and James and others last night and the last few days. My point on this really is I feel like, and this is a feeling, but we have a tendency to say no a lot of times and not necessarily figure out how we can work with our community. As you've heard from Kim and from Alex and these other individuals that are moving in, I would like to find a workable agreement where we can work with these individuals and give a win to these advocates that are coming to Peoria, that are taxpayers, that are investing in historic homes in our neighborhoods. Is there an opportunity where the neighborhood councils and our HOAs could potentially mandate what's happening in their neighborhoods for chickens? I love the idea of this being able to create a community. Talk to your neighbor to your left and your right. Is this okay? I know there was a statement about 10 feet. I believe that it's been moved to 20 feet. There's a workable way without saying no to making this an opportunity for those that really want this opportunity in their backyard. That's really all I wanted to say. Thank you, guys.
Welcome.
My name's Michael. Live out in the Vista neighborhood. Miss Jackson, where she went to, she needs to clean our mailbox so she can get some telephone calls in. But anyway, I'm a homeowner out in the Vista area neighborhood. I've been on farms. I've lived on farms. Chickens are a farm animal. They're not zoned for here in town. We don't need chickens in town. We don't need farm animals in town. If I want to live on a farm, I'll move to a farm. I want my house in town. I don't want the value of my house going down because of chickens. We don't need chickens in town.
Next person.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Jackson Webb, and I live in the Uplands. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight about what backyard chickens mean to the community of Peoria. Over the past few months, we've attended many farmers markets, events, and festivals where we've had a booth dedicated to discussing chickens. One of the remarkable things I've noticed is how people's eyes light up when we talk about chickens. These aren't just animals. To many, chickens are beloved pets. We've met people eager to share stories about their flocks from previous homes, each bird with its own name, personality, and quirks. The joy and pride on their faces when they speak about the chickens are similar to how people talk about their grandchildren or dogs and cats. It's clear that these birds are deeply loved. Some people would tell us about the secret chicken coops in their backyards, and they've shared how they exchange eggs with neighbors who in turn share vegetables from their gardens, and how these exchanges have helped foster a strong sense of community and connections among neighbors. Others express excitement at the prospect of keeping chickens once more, having been told for so long that it wasn't possible. For many, the idea of having these cherished pets in their backyards again was really exciting. In talking with the community, we've also heard from individuals struggling financially who see keeping chickens as a way to reduce their grocery bills. Others felt frustrated that they couldn't use their own property as they wish. The feedback we've received about chickens has been overwhelmingly positive, which has been heartwarming to hear. I myself work at a local bakery, and since the chicken petition began making the rounds, the topic of chickens has come up frequently in conversation. We have a farmer who brings us 4 dozen eggs every couple of weeks in exchange for a pie and some cookies. He lets us talk about his chickens, and this exchange is just an example of how chickens can help build a sense of community. My experiences and conversations with the community have shown me the positive impact that backyard chickens can have. With almost 2,000 signatures supporting this initiative, I believe allowing backyard chickens in Peoria will bring many benefits to our community. Say yes to making a motion to bring forward with the next step.
Is there one more?
Good evening. I'm Jessamine Hill, lives in 61614. I am here wearing yellow, and I'm in solidarity and in support of raising chickens in the city of Peoria. Why raise chickens? 4 reasons. Reason number 1, because Peoria, south of Forest Hill Avenue, is a food desert, with the exception of Haddad's Grocery, the Fresh Asian Market, and all these convenience stores popping up like a bad case of pimples, selling hot chips and colored sugar water. The food desert problem began in this town in 2009 when the campus town Save-A-Lot closed, followed by Cub Foods on Knoxville, and then in 2018, Kroger closed the East Bluff and Southside locations. And that led to folks having to travel 10 to 20 minutes to Bartonville, East Peoria, or north of Forest Hill to buy food, or they have to depend on rations from the food pantries once a month. Reason number 2, we have plenty of empty lots where houses once stood. A property owner who lives next to a lot that used to have a house on there, they can come downtown here to the township assessor's office and buy all or part of that lot, annex it to their property, and build a chicken coop. Reason number 3, food shortages and supply chain issues. Even after that heck hole called the COVID-19 pandemic, shelves are still getting empty. For example, I went to the Sterling Bazaar Kroger, and their shelves for the produce and bread, they were nearly empty. Thus, meaning families will have to wait until morning or next week for the trucks to bring in food from the distribution centers. Reason number 4, raising chickens in the city is educational. I bet you a percentage of city slickers still think eggs and other whole foods come from the store. Wrong. They come from rural and urban farms. Raising chickens in the city teaches children about agriculture and where food really comes from. In addition, I understand why the Zoning Commission would want input from animal control, because they think someone could smuggle in a rooster or someone might abandon and neglect a flock of chickens, leading to figure out where to place them. With the power of social media groups, chickens can be rehomed. The last thing we would want to hear in terms of input from animal control would probably be something like, "We have too many dogs and cats in our shelters, and we don't have room for some stupid chickens." Just a thought. As for homeowners associations, they have their own rules on just about anything, and if they don't want chickens, then that's their choice. And as for any of the Karens who are complaining in regards to wildlife, You ever heard of squirrels, white-tailed deer, pigeons, and woodchucks, and songbirds? And the concern about bird flu that the sensationalist fear-mongering mass media is spreading, that disease is due to factory farms where chickens are kept in concentration camp-like conditions, crowded together, never breathing fresh air or seeing the light of day or feasting on bugs and worms. Free-range backyard chickens won't need to worry about bird flu. So I'd say if Kroger, Hy-Vee, IGA, and these corporate-owned grocery chains don't want to open in working-class, poor neighborhoods, then we Peorians can take back Main Street. So I hope, Mayor and City Council, that you take everything myself and everybody else says into consideration to pass this ordinance to encourage urban farming, healthy eating, solving the food desert crisis, and making Peoria a wonderful place and unique place to live. P.S. Did you know during World War II, the federal government encouraged all Americans to grow their own food? They called them victory gardens. Now, fast forward, it seems like the government doesn't want us to be independent. They want us to live off of hot chips and colored sugar water. Thank you.
Evening. Thank you all for your time. My name's Josh Hunt. I live at 315 West Westwood. I appreciate your time tonight. You've heard a lot from a lot of us, and how do I say this? I empathize for you. If this isn't a topic you love, that you're still sitting here and listening to us, I do appreciate that. And, you know, as I'm sitting here reflecting on this, I have my reasons I want chickens, obviously. Ultimately, I lived in Dallas where they're illegal. I've raised chickens. Some of the things you're hearing here about the negatives of chickens I would say are overblown or in some cases false. But I can't convince you of that any more than I can convince some of the other people. So ultimately, you know, you've heard discussions about poop in apartment buildings, which isn't really germane to this proposal. You've heard concerns about are they going to be running wild? And all I can say is if I go to all this work to have chickens in my yard and following the guidelines, there's no way I'm going to let these critters run wild. My kids will give me so much grief. I have 5 little kids. I don't want to explain that to them, why their chicken's missing. It's not happening. So I just want to encourage you all that some of these concerns are valid and important, but the degree to which you might be stressing about them, I just want to encourage you to calm down internally a little bit about that. And really, the bigger part, do the work of governing is what I would ask. So I can appreciate if it's something you're not familiar with. I would just simply ask that you, you know, there's a crowd here, and you ultimately are in your shoes, not mine, and I'm not in yours. But I would just ask that you do the weird, bizarre work of city governing and learn about chicken life to whatever degree you need to make an informed decision. So that at the end of the day, you can feel confident in knowing, well, how many eggs does a chicken actually make? Not what that guy in yellow said or the guy who wasn't in yellow said, or how much do they smell? How loud are they? Really, my ask is for that. Additionally, I would just say I worked in public schools previously, high schools, in a previous line of work, and I'm in a public-facing role now with, I see all parts of the city, all sorts of young people, and there's a theme that I don't love, and I know Peoria's got a lot of great things going for it, also some things that, you know, with eyes open, we can say we could improve on. And one of the refrains that makes me a little leery is this idea that I have to go somewhere else to live the life I want to live, or to do the things I want to do, to open the business I want to open, or chase whatever ambition. You know, and high schoolers, particularly at that age where they're deciding, what's my next destination? What's my vision for life? And I don't want, you know, I like I said, 5 little kids. I want them to grow up and think Peoria is awesome, and I can go after the things I want to accomplish right here. I don't need to move to Chicago or Denver or Austin. I don't want that for my kids. So yes, this is a silly little topic like chickens, but for some people, it's a bigger topic. And I think it's emblematic of this discussion we ought to consider more frequently of what is our vision for Peoria? Is it a place where people can pursue their weird, goofy hobbies, even if they're not my hobbies, but in a way that's respectful of their neighbors and that builds community? Or is it a place where that's not really conventional, so we're just going to be a no? Again, I'm just asking you to do the research on your end to learn more about it so that you can make that choice in a way that honors that vision that each of you have for the reason you ran for the position you're in now. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your feedback. We appreciate your expressions and thoughts. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, there was a lot of convincing going on, wasn't there? I think, for me, I'm not prepared to say yes or no tonight, to be totally honest. And I would suggest that we take 30 days till the next meeting in July to get out to our neighborhood associations, to hear what the HOAs say, to see what the people to our right and our left say about it. There's some really good information here that we've been provided, and I think before we instruct staff to go into it, we as the council need to get a feel of what the temperature is in the community and hear what our constituents really are interested in. I mentioned this at an HOA meeting last night and got kind of a muted response. And if that's the way it is in 30 days, fine. But I think we owe it to ourselves as council members to take it to the street, if you will, and see what the folks say. So I would move to receive and file this communication and bring it back at the second meeting of July for further action.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Velpula.
And if I might quickly
yes, go
add,
ahead.
and to instruct staff to take no further action at this time.
Amended action, okay. I do have a question, Mr. Manager. Is it possible to put an estimated cost to an ordinance like this? And not now, but in 30 days, is it possible? Or is that taking a lot of
Well, it'll take some staff time to do that. I mean, in order for us to really look and analyze this, to talk to other peers, and then come to a better estimate, it'll take staff time to do it, certainly. But we can come back to you in 30 days with some estimates on what that cost would be.
Okay. I think that would be helpful. I know it's a little bit different from your motion, but I think knowing the estimated cost is important to council.
Absolutely.
So any other comments, questions? Councilmember Gordon-Young?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank everyone for coming out to discuss chickens tonight. We chuckle about it, but it gave me an opportunity to sort of go down memory lane where most summers my family traveled to Slayton, Texas to visit my family who had chicken farms or chickens, raising chickens. And in that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The way the motion was worded, I had my light on to talk about the topic. I'm not sure if this is technically a deferral and whether I should continue that or if we're...
It's not a deferral.
No.
He's just... He said receive and file. He did say receive and file.
And bring it back in 30 days for further. No, I can make that one motion.
I think it needs to be two or one or the other or something. But if I'm calling point of order, I want to make sure I know exactly what I'm talking about here, and I'm not sure what I'm talking about.
You want to receive and file and then ask to, well, it is kind of a deferral, but...
And bring that up in new business? Appropriate Corporation Council?
Council Hayes, what's your recommendation?
I certainly think that if Councilman Riggenbach wants to stand on the receive and file, and then bring a new matter up under new business, that'd be appropriate and within our rules. I think the confusion is that a motion to defer, which this sort of looks like, has some other additional rules under the city council rules. So I think Councilman Euler has made an excellent suggestion to get what Councilman Riggenbach wants.
I'm confused.
Okay, your motion stands at receive and file with the request to revisit this in 30 days.
Yeah.
Okay. That was seconded by Councilman Velpula. Councilman Euler?
I'm just going to save my questions for these fine folks in a private setting.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Graham?
Well, this is a night where the council people want to defer everything. They don't want to vote anything up or down. I don't know what we're going to learn in 30 days by just going out to whatever neighborhoods we have that might be having a meeting in June. A lot of neighborhoods don't have meetings in June or even July. One thing I pick up when I talk to the people who are in favor of this is their passion for our community. And they seem to have more restrictive attitudes than I could ever even imagine. They've done a lot of research on this. So, I'm glad we listened to them a little bit tonight, but eventually we got to get our act together and say, yes, no, maybe, limitations, whatever. But everything's just deferred tonight. I don't get it. I think that it's analysis paralysis is what I think it is. Analysis paralysis, and I'm not even sure that we're going to be getting much of anything additional back. I think staff needs to get some information for us tonight. That's what I think staff should do. And as I've told my constituents, some kind of regulatory architecture that would work, or maybe it wouldn't work. But I don't think it hurts to look into it. And some of the people who are here because they love Peoria. Some of them come from other cities. They don't want to live in other cities. I pick up on that passion, and I think that's something that's all too frequently lacking in our city. And so I commend the people who are here, but heck, I don't know how many neighborhood meetings I'm going to have before we reconvene. But I'll tell you what, in one night I learned more from 3 or 4 of the people who are out there just by listening to them and some of their thoughts than from our staff. So I think it's time for our staff to weigh in. Why not? What are we going to learn in a month when most of our neighborhood associations aren't meeting anyway?
Councilman, I think what 30 days does, certainly for me, it gives more time to simmer this information, to absorb this information. We got some emails, maybe some calls from individuals related to this, but I think that we heard from probably 15 people tonight who spoke to the issue. And I would really like to know the cost, estimated cost, how much capacity is required for something like this, because it seems like a huge undertaking of code enforcement and facilities, and I want to know what's all involved, and we don't know that tonight. Well, I did ask if they could come back in 30 days with an estimated cost. That will take some effort. Sorry.
Should be put on a cost basis. There are some intangible things like people who are enthusiastic about living here. I would say this. when it's all said and done, what do you want to bet there aren't that many folks who would like to do this? But those who do, let's see if there's a way we can accommodate them. I really predict that. I think most of the people in District 2 are all over the city, as have represented everybody in the city at one time or the other, wouldn't want to do this. But is there a way that we can accommodate those who do and add to their quality of life? Anyway, it's just been analysis paralysis tonight, and it's very frustrating to see this great council tied up in knots like this, on this and other issues. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm purposely not deferring this, but let's be honest. This information is something that has been filling our email box for the last couple of weeks. We've never talked about this as a body until tonight. So I'm not, no disrespect for anybody out there. I agree the passion is palatable, but we need to talk about that as the policymakers for a minute before we run into this with an investment which will take some dollars from the city. So I think I don't want to be seen as obstructionist in any way, but I think we owe it to have some dialogue amongst ourselves before we direct staff which way to go. So that's my intention. So I hope that comes across. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, you're welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maybe I'm beating a dead horse. We're looking at receiving and filing. There isn't something that we are deferring. What is it that we're deferring? We're not deferring anything. Okay, we are taking 30 days to talk it over, etc. Okay, which to me should have been in new business, but it isn't. So I'd like to call the question, even though we've got two different motions in the motion.
Okay. Are you speaking to this? Councilman Euler?
Does he need a second to call the
Oh,
question?
I need a second.
Well, then I can go on with what I wanted to talk about because there's no second.
Okay. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Seer. Councilmember Euler?
He seconded, so I can't talk about it.
Okay.
Rules.
Okay. We can recall the question. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay, Graham. Councilmember Gordon Young? Nope.
Oh, I thought I voted.
Okay, I thought.
I think.
Okay. All right. Madam Clerk? Do it.
If I could, for clarity, was that motion on the call to question, or was that vote, should I say, was that vote on the call of the question, or was that vote on the receive and file? That vote was on the calling the question, so now we have to have the vote on the receive and file.
Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay, Graham. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are at unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business?
I have one unfinished business item, and that's that the application date for accepting applications for the interim treasurer position has been extended until July 21st. That's a Sunday, July 21st, to allow more time to receive qualified applications. Is there any other unfinished business? Clerk?
Then we are at new business.
Is there any new business? Councilmember Regenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, we talk a lot about our staff and how much we appreciate the work they do and the efforts that they put in and day out. Well, one of our staff members is going to be celebrating her 25th anniversary with the city this week. So, Assistant Director Leah Allison, if you would stand to be recognized. We have those T-shirts. We appreciate Peoria. Well, Leah Allison, we appreciate everything you do for us day in and day out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beautiful. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A notice will go out, but a friendly reminder, because of the holiday next Thursday, Independence Day, I will be canceling my monthly Coffee with Constituents, which is held on the first Thursday of the month at Panera Bread and Westlake Shopping Center. So a notice will go out, and I'll also post it on my social media, but just wanted to put that out there to the listening audience. I'm not sure if Panera is open next Thursday, so if you still want to take the risk, you can go, but unfortunately I will not be able to join you, and we'll reconvene in August. Thank you.
You're welcome. Also, under new business, the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce will host the annual State of the City event this Thursday, June the 27th at 5:30 p.m. It will be held at Haven on the Farm event facility. Councilmember Grant?
Thank you. The next time, I know you guys are tired of hearing me say this, but the next time we meet as a body, it'll be after the 4th of July. Okay, before we have all the crises that we're going to have with incendiary devices that are being blown off in the city, perhaps you, Superintendent of Police Eric Echeverria, could give a little overview on what the police department expects from our citizens. And I'll tell you what I expect. I expect a lot of us should be enjoying probably one of the very best fireworks in the entire state. Chicago's not even having fireworks this year. And we're going to probably have 200,000 people, and I hope it's as orderly as it was last year, on both sides of the Illinois River. Chief, you know every year we go through this, and I want you to lay down the law on what's expected, especially in our densely populated neighborhoods where chickens could be a problem.
Well, obviously, fireworks are illegal, and you could be fined for doing it. So we kindly ask that, and I recently said this to the media, is remember what 4th of July is. And we have many veterans who suffer from PTSD, who have fought for this country, and during that time may be hiding or shivering or going through a moment because of the loud booms. And we also have animals that may include chickens, right, that may be scared of the fireworks, but most poorly dogs, right, that we hear about. So don't do it. It's illegal, and you could be fined.
Chief, we have these people who set up their stands in the county especially. Are we checking those to be sure they're not selling things that are wholly illegal in the state of Illinois? I mean, I know we're short on staff, and we were really surprised at how much.
Right, if it's in the county, that's going to be the sheriff's office, and obviously we're in contact with the sheriff. If we see anything within the city, we'll obviously respond to that and take a look and see what's going on.
Yeah, we all want to be patriots on the 4th of July, but we don't want to be blowing up our neighborhoods and doing exactly what you said. We don't need people showing up at the hospital emergency room without a hand or blinded and things of that nature. And that's why I'm saying it now, because 4th of July is coming up. And I don't know about you guys, the other district council members, but I get calls about the amount of pyrotechnics going on and the sheer power of some of them. It sounds like a blast you're likelier to hear in a war zone.
Yes, sir.
And that's not legal.
It's not.
And the biggest problem we have with controlling that, Chief, is we have states all around us where people can travel to get this stuff. And then they can surreptitiously bring it into the county. And we can't police it the way we would like to. We do the best we can. But I just hope this year is on a par with what it was last year. Whatever you did last year, Chief, it seemed to make things a whole lot better than the
You're doing
previous
that.
years. And I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council.
We have quite a few cards. Everybody may not still be here, though, but the first is Michael Peterson. Is Mr. Peterson still here? Lorraine King?
Good evening. My name is Lorraine King. I live in Peoria, Illinois. I frequently don't attend council meetings in person unless it's a special event. However, I still strive to keep up with discussions and decisions that are made around the horseshoe because I like to be an engaged and an informed citizen. On June 11th, I stayed over after the Juneteenth proclamation to support the report of the two co-chairs of the Racial Justice and Equity Commission because I'm a member of one of the subcommittees. After the report was done, one councilman made a remark where he stated, racism is no real big deal. I thought I was experiencing a cognitive deficit. So I sat up straighter to listen more intently, and a voice inside me said, what he's saying is a really big deal, and I can't miss a word of this. I was on the edge of my seat as the council began to espouse the benefits of the Jim Crow era. And to my chagrin, my thoughts drifted to the head of one of the highly populated southern states, where citizens were told that slavery was beneficial to blacks. Those who know me know that I volunteer a great deal in the community, and so I still had to make time to respond to these remarks. I could not shake my head and walk away. So I want everyone who's in the sound of my voice to know that racism is and always has been a real big deal, especially those of us who've had to experience it. I was born into it. I powered through it as a civil rights activist, and occasionally I encounter it. Second, the comments he made that appeared to be telling us that black families thrived during the Jim Crow era because the percentage of black marriage rates were higher than the majority of marriage rates in the U.S., and there were fewer unwed mothers. If any group of people has been enslaved, separated from their biological families, had relatives and children taken from them to go on the shopping block, of course, once they are no longer enslaved, they're going to cling to each other and want to be together. So I just want, if any of you, especially black children, black adults, think being free from slavery made everything hunky-dory, or you feeling lackadaisical or just plain lazy, I'm begging you, take off your grave clothes and come to attention and put on the full armor of God. Because this fight is not one that's fought with guns or bombs, but it's about equality, opportunity, and fairness. There was nothing positive about being black during the era of Jim Crow. The laws were a collection of state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation for about 100 years and were meant to marginalize African Americans or black people by denying them the right to vote, hold jobs, get an education, eat out, go to parks, get medical care, ride the train, go to ball games, and on, the list goes on. These laws were to functionally strip us of freedoms granted by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Laws that took blacks from enslavement to indentured servitude with the same objective, maintaining them in a state of inferiority. Sound familiar in 2024? Those who attempted to defy Jim Crow laws faced arrest, fines, jail sentences, violence, and death. Some who try to make you feel nostalgic about Jim Crow may attempt to justify their perspective with a very narrow viewpoint about black marriages that did not result in increased wealth, well-being, or income for those couples. Those who try to delude you into thinking blacks were more conservative, we were conservative, but not by the definitions that are utilized today. To the argument about whether disparities is a cause or effect, one citation I read stated, health disparities are an underlying cause of many medical disorders. Vulnerable populations are affected disproportionately because of race, income, etc. In order not to get bogged down with nomenclature, I hope that we can agree that racism, disparities, and Jim Crow laws all serve to diminish the positive outlook and potential for targeted citizens in our nations. So, Councilman, disparities, racism, and laws can be changed with intentional policies and behavior. You said you wanted the commission to bring you root causes and not symptoms, so this civic body can adjust them. You sounded sincere, even though I disagree with your perspectives. So therefore, as a member of the Joint Commission on Racial Justice and Equity, I invite Councilman Kelly to advocate and assist this commission by talking with us, continue this conversation to help clarify what you're looking for, to help the commission help you get a better understanding of our perspectives in a civil matter. The Peoria Branch NAACP and our executive committee will welcome you to be a guest at our monthly informational meetings. We're all stakeholders in this city and county of Peoria. We work best when we work together toward the common good. Thank you, Mayor, thank you, council people, and thank you, staff, for allowing me to speak in this forum.
I don't see him here. Devin Sidnor. Lawrence Machard.
Thank you very much. I just want to applaud the lady who just spoke, and I want to say before I even start, please consider about putting the public comment at the beginning of the meeting. You know, it seems like there's some intentionality involved here to try to actually push, the public. It's been 3 hours, 3+ hours, which I know you all know. So please consider changing the format. I'm here. My name is Lawrence Machard. I live in the East Bluff, proudly so, 710 East Arcadia. And I'm here as a founder of Peoria for Palestine. Again, we want to be here to let the city of Peoria know that we are not going away, that our issue has gotten only worse since February, when we were all here and all very much involved with what we want to address, which is a ceasefire in Gaza, a resolution from the Peoria City Council. Now, I'm very aware of what the good Dr. Mayor Ali said at the time, but I think things have changed. Like I said, things are much, much worse. Even the President of the United States sponsored a Security Council, a UN Security Council resolution, a measure for an immediate ceasefire. I think that the public is behind us very strongly on this, and we're looking at this from a human rights point of view. Now, when we brought this issue to the mayor's office and to other people earlier this year, there was some folks who said, Well, you know, where were you folks when the other things were going on in our society, like Black Lives Matter? You know, where were you folks? And I want to say this, that Peoria for Palestine is first and foremost a human rights issue. It's a human rights organization. And myself, my partner, all of my allies, we were very involved with Black Lives Matter when the uprising started, you know, in 2020. We were part of the 2 huge peaceful rallies in Peoria. No one had ever seen those kind of demonstrations. We were part of the Black Trans Lives Matter rally here in Peoria. Not only that, we were involved with the Black Lives Matter rallies, peaceful rallies in Pekin, Illinois, a sundown legacy town with all of that baggage that goes with that. We were there not once, but twice, and then a third time when the grassroots people, the human rights community, stood up and said, no, we are not going to allow the suppression of these things to go unchallenged. And we did this in Bloomington, and we did this in Macomb, okay? So we have been with the oppressed at home and abroad for a very long time. This is something that the massacres go on nightly, daily, and we want to get Peoria on the record as supporting a lasting, durable, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, just like the president wants. Please consider this. Thank you very much.
Anthony Walraven.
I probably should have sent you guys an email, to be honest. My name's Anthony Walraven. I live at 9309 North Northview in Peoria. President of the City Employees Union. I came here to thank you guys for appointing Jacob Russell to the library board, which was done in a collaborative process where members of this council engaged with the union, and we put forth a candidate that we believed has experience with the library, which is rare, as you guys kind of found out, and who is passionate about the role of the library in the community. And my union feels that that kind of collaboration between us and you could benefit the other boards that directly involve us, such as the PHA and a few others. So I want to commend the council members that attended meetings with us, the ones that were going to, and then we had issues, Dr. Young, Councilman Vespa, Councilman Allen, Councilman Graeb. I know that Councilman Euler, Councilman Riggenbach, and Councilwoman Jackson had stuff lined up, and obviously stuff happens. But I want to thank you for that, because that is the kind of collaboration that I think will make for a better library system. I also want to thank the city staff, which is something that as a union president I don't probably do. But we had an issue with our back pay. It turns out it hadn't been calculated properly according to the Fair Labor Standards Act, and I want to commend city staff, both in the finance department and human relations and legal, for resolving that issue very promptly and fairly for not just my members, but my retired members and union members across the city. I think it was up to 600 some odd people will be getting a check on Friday, in total of over $180,000. So I want to thank city staff for handling that issue equitably and fairly and resolving it fairly quickly. I know the amount of hours that went into figuring that, but it had to be resolved because the law was broken. Not intentionally, just through an oversight. To pivot, as we all know, the grocery tax is expiring January 1st of 2025. Is it 2026? I'm sorry. And the city manager was interviewed by WCBU earlier this month and said that that will provide a $4 million hole in the budget. And that you guys have until January 1st, 2026 to come up with a solution for that. I propose you just pass a grocery tax of 1% that goes into effect right when the state one ends, which is not a tax increase because we're all already paying it. Rather, or come up with another revenue source that provides $4 million a year to the city budget. But to pretend that that is a tax increase when it's what we already pay, and to pretend that the state did this when they merely acted as a pass-through to get that money back to us, is unacceptable. A $4 million hole in the budget will bring us back to the bad old days of not only just laying off my members, but laying off police, fire, closing stations, cutting public services. There is no other way around that. A $4 million a year hole in the budget will devastate city services. We have 18 months, 24 months to come up with a solution, but that solution is not going to be, it cannot be lay off members, furlough workers, cut public services. I think the simplest one is just to pass, which we all know as a home rule city we can do, pass the 1% grocery tax that would take effect the day the current one ends. But what can't happen, guys, which happens so often in Peoria, and most of you weren't on the city council, is in November of 2025, nothing has been done, and then it's like, well, do we cut a firehouse, or do we cut police officers, or do we cut code enforcement, or do we cut the number of plow truck drivers? That's not acceptable. We have 2 years. But I just wanted to, I haven't heard anyone mention that that was an option in the media, but yeah, we have the power as a home rule city to just keep that tax going. The tax wasn't ended. The state just isn't going to be the pass-through for it anymore. So I beseech you, come up with something quick. That way everyone knows what's going on. My members don't have to worry about job cuts or service cuts, and you guys can move on to other issues like the chickens. So thank you very much. I have to go to work. Have a good night.
Estrella Diaz. Estella Diaz. Hind Akar.
Good evening, and I know we're bringing this heavy topic to the end of a long meeting. We appreciate your listening to us. We've been in this chamber before, but things have changed since. For us, we think of 76 brutal years since the Nakba, the catastrophe. And here we are again in another Nakba with no end in sight and absolutely no accountability for the occupier, the perpetrator, and the aggressor. The Nakba, as you know, is when the Palestinian land was taken over by a zealot minority at that time and became the country of Israel on the land of Palestine. So the genocide is ongoing. 8 months, and our country continued to be full partner in this genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza. The last number our country is sending to Israel is 26 billion with a B, of our tax dollars. 14 of them are weapons, including 2,000-pound bombs. A doctor who was in Gaza recently, he told us that children were coming to the hospital dead, but they looked like they are sleeping. There are no external injuries. Their internals were shattered just by the violence of the explosions. And I tell you from personal experience, not even close to this, but kind of, that the sounds of these explosions and the sounds of jet fighters are the most horrific sounds you will ever hear. So our tax dollars in support of the Israeli genocidal war, if used internally, would provide our state of Illinois of a couple of $billion. Our city of Peoria can receive close to $2 million. Yet, murdering civilians in Gaza and the West Bank and starving children to an excruciating death seems to be more worthy cause for our government. After all, Netanyahu ordered us to pay. Netanyahu is really despicable, barbaric war criminal destined for prison in his own country and in a wartime crime tribunal, if ever a law is applied. He will be visiting our country to give a talk to the Senate, joint session of the Senate, towards the end of July. And as we all watch all of our highly elected officials stand to kiss his hand and applaud him bazillion times, remember that will be a very low point for our country, very low point that a war criminal is addressing our Senate. I want to say also that our children in schools, in universities, showed us actually the bravery in standing up for human rights, for the freedom of speech, for what's right. And this is an example for all of us. I want to say also that their steadfastness gave me hope. And we know that the tide is shifting. The youth is requiring us to speak up, to talk about the humanity, to oppose genocide, to oppose investing in genocidal wars. And for us, I want to really beseech you to speak up against the genocide, to oppose it, to be for human rights, to be for justice. That's all we need. Justice, your voice that will tell this is a grassroots movement in every city, in every town. And Urbana passed a city council meeting, but nothing, no division in the town happened and no battle ensued. It can be done. It's the right thing to do. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Adam, Patom, Adam.
I don't know if I should say good night or good evening because we're about to go to sleep. So, obviously, we're back again, and we're going to keep going back. And one big thing that I've been getting, I've spoken to city council members all the way up to Chicago and down to St. Louis. And the main thing I get when people talk to me about what's the ceasefire going to do, it's not a local issue. I mean, are we going to have to wait until it becomes a local issue? If we look at what happened in Chicago, Wadi' al-Fayoumi, a 6-year-old boy who got stabbed 20 times by his landlord. Why? He was wearing a kufiya, came back from a protest, a rally that happened in Chicago. He got stabbed 20 times, and his mom got stabbed 3 times. I went to his funeral, by the way. It was back a long time ago, like 2-3 months ago. And also in Vermont with the 3 boys, the 3 college students who were also wearing the kufiyas, who got shot, each of them. And, you know, it's just disturbing to know because obviously you guys all see my outfit. You all see what I wear. You know, there's people like that all over the world. And we need our city to speak up and know and help us know that we feel safe and protected. So I don't want to take too much time since we've all had a long night, but I do want to say one more thing. You guys, I know we've had a long night and everything. I'm going to kind of ruin your night a little more. I quit Cold Stone, so I don't think anyone can get a free ice cream anymore. Sorry.
Darcy, Katie.
Good evening, everyone, City Council members and Mayor Dr. Rita Ali. Thank you all so much for riding this wave tonight with this extended meeting. I'm here on behalf of Peoria for Palestine, so I've really struggled to put what I'm about to tell you next into words because it's my story, my sibling's story, and my father's story. I know the relevance of this might not make sense now, but I hope by the end of my speech that you'll see clearly why change is necessary and action must be taken. This story begins in 1969 when my father chose to give up his full-ride scholarship to play football for Bradley University and to enlist in the United States Navy at the age of 17. After receiving his training at U.S. Naval Academy, he would go on to become a member of the United States Navy Special Operations Force, also known as the Navy SEALs. During his service, he was stationed in Guam in the Western Pacific and later Vietnam. While serving in Vietnam, my father would be exposed to large amounts of a white powdery substance that would later become known as Agent Orange. I recall being told stories of how he would be covered along with the other soldiers from head to toe as they would make their way through the Vietnamese jungle. Agent Orange is a toxic herbicide that was used by the U.S. military during the Vietnam War from 61 to 71 as part of Operation Ranch Hand. According to the U.S. military, the goal was to rob the Viet Cong of food sources and places to hide amongst the foliage. The U.S. military reportedly mixed and used Agent Orange at a rate of 6 to 25 times the strength recommended by the manufacturers. This persistent organic pollutant would leave behind a lethal legacy for all exposed to it, as well as many of their descendants. Fast forward to 1996, and my father is suddenly diagnosed with an aggressive form of nasopharyngeal cancer. After completing multiple rounds of radiation treatments along with chemotherapy, he was given 3 days to live by his medical team. Through sheer determination and grit, my dad would go on to outlive his cancer diagnosis by 27 years. And he paid the price for it every day. I'm sorry. The radiation and chemo treatments that he received, he would lose all of his teeth, his facial hair. He would begin to aspirate food into his lungs due to the damage sustained to his esophagus. And he would spend the last 7 years of his life receiving nutrition through a G-tube. He would spend the last 5 years of his life with vascular dementia. None of these things were hereditary. They were all attributed due to his time in the service, where he was exposed to Agent Orange by both his civilian doctors as well as his care team at the VA. But remember what I said about a lethal legacy. My father would go on to have 6 daughters, 5 of which would present with rare and chronic diseases with no prior family history. What makes this even more unsettling is that my siblings and I do not share the same diagnosis. Our care teams could not attribute these chronic and rare diseases after extensive testing to any other source other than genetic mutations. I know none of you were expecting a review of 7th grade science tonight, but the reason that I bring this up in detail is because it's important to clearly state that these diseases are not hereditary. Their origin is environmental. We received mutated genes from our father's Agent Orange exposure, and now we also pay the price too, due to the United States government's negligent use of chemicals on a civilian population. This is a direct violation of the Geneva Convention. With my particular condition, also known as Sappho syndrome, I am aging internally at approximately twice the rate of my peers. My spine and major joints are fusing together, and multiple body systems have been affected. I apologize, Madam Mayor, for the time. I find this to be unacceptable and should have never happened to myself, nor my siblings, nor anyone. But there are millions more of me being created in Palestine every time the IOF drops white phosphorus bombs on innocent civilians paid for by our local tax dollars. It's not enough for 5% of the Palestinian population to be wiped out in genocide committed by Israel and
I'm
funded.
sorry, your time is up.
Thank you.
Sean Hess. The Keyshawn. Keyshawn Hess.
Hello, my name is Keyshawn Hess, and last meeting's main topic of conversation was about racism, in particular racial disparities and racial discrimination. I would simply like to add, racial discrimination is often quantified by actions and lack of actions, and also quantified by words. Racial discrimination is when a black family walks into a restaurant and the white family that walks in after them is tended to before and with much more friendlier service, simply because the assumption that black families do not tip well and things of that nature. Another example of racial discrimination would be if a black man walks into a restaurant and instead of being offered a seat, he's looked over and then asked, "Are you a DoorDash or are you here for a pickup order?" Those are just some quick examples of racial discrimination in today's society. Disparities are symptoms of racial discrimination and racism overall, yes, but sneezing is a symptom of a common cold, and you stop the sneezing to stop the spread of illness the same way you would stop the disparities to stop the spread of racism. Racism creates disparities, disparities create division, and division creates more racism. I'm not here to slander anyone's character or point fingers and name call. I'm simply here to ask the city council to look inward and reflect a little bit, and that's all. Thank you.
Welcome. Shandell Walker here. Shandell Walker. Tara Wood. Oh, Shandell, okay. Are you Shandell?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, I'm here to discuss a few issues. And one of the issues that you all had on your agenda was issuing out $750,000 to vacant lots cleaning. If I am allowed to ask a question, is that money going to be distributed to
You
some
can ask,
minorities?
but we can't give you an answer in this format.
In this format, but at least consider thinking about it. I wanted to know who that money was going to be allotted to. And another topic I have was there are a lot of kids in the East Peoria neighborhood. I'm from the East Bluff neighborhood. And these kids seem to be not having any activities to do. They're running around the streets. They're doing whatever. They're walking the streets 5, 6, 7, 8 years old by themselves. It's not their faults. Their parents may be on drugs or whatever the case may be. But I think that we need to address this issue. I do what I can by passing out bread and cookies and cakes. I give these kids whatever they need. I walked down the streets last night and gave them bubble gum. They outside at 9 o'clock at night. This is absurd. And I get it. I get it. I know some of you all have $300,000-$400,000 homes. Some of you all probably don't even really have an inkling of a concern, and I get it. Y'all work hard. You pay your bills and so on and so forth. But I'm just a simple guy trying to get some simple solutions to try to fix a problem that may be overlooked, and these kids do need a helping hand. I don't know what the solution is. 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have this. We had to be in the house before the street lights came out. These kids are running the streets after the street lights came out. And I don't know, I don't have a clue of what to do. I'm just a simple guy. I work an honest job. I get back to society in the best way I can. I do what I can when I can. But in my community, these kids are just out there running around, doing whatever, and it shouldn't be like that. It's not their fault. Their parents are in a bad situation. It's a cycle, and I don't know how to break it. I'm just by myself trying to figure it out myself. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if I'm doing the wrong thing, but I beseech you all to just take a hard stance at it, to try to build a football stadium, build a soccer field, or whatever the case may be. These are children that can hopefully go up to be be somebody someday, or do something with themselves someday. But I'm telling you, we're living in two different Peorias. I've traveled to Farmington Road. I traveled to Pioneer Parkway. I've been to every place in Peoria I can possibly think of. I'm coming from Chicago, and we're living in two different Peorias, just like we're living in two different Chicagos. I'm not blaming nobody. I'm not putting the blame on nobody. I'm just asking for suggestions. I'm asking for help. And it's all kinds of kids in all ethnicities, just walking the streets, roaming the streets, doing whatever. I had to look at the back of our truck a couple of days ago, and they're breaking into a truck. I mean, it's not their fault. Their parents are doing whatever. But however, I'm just asking for you all to take a hard look at some of these symptoms, some of these causes of why these children are in the shape that they're in. That's all I got.
Tara Wood.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Honorable Council members. My name is Tara Wood. I live in District 5 with my spouse and 6-year-old. I'm here on behalf of Peoria for Palestine. Why haven't we passed a ceasefire resolution here in Peoria? Is it something about the language in the resolution in the past? Is it that you think you'll be taking a side? Do you believe that this is not an issue for local government? Do you feel not informed enough to make the decision? If it is the language, let's sit down together as human beings, dedicate ourselves to principled compromise to ensure the resolution contains language important to all parties. Let's add our city to the growing list of cities around the country, over 100 as of March, who are saying we demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the region. We demand the release of all Israeli hostages. We demand the release of all Palestinian children and the Palestinians who are detained without charge. We demand an end to military funding to a state being accused of countless war crimes. What is controversial about this? This is not siding with Israel or Hamas. This is siding with humanity by saying we must stop the killing, especially when those most affected by this war are children. By remaining neutral at this point, it looks like we cannot decide between the killing of innocents and humanity. What is wrong with us that we have not said as a city, stop? One reason that has been given is that local government does not affect foreign policy, not directly, I guess. But actions by local governments give federal leaders an idea of what Americans from across the country are thinking and feeling, and this informs their policy. Those of us in this room who are asking for this resolution have called, texted, emailed, and had meetings with all of our representatives, state and federal leaders, on a continual basis since October. They are not listening. If we are truly a country that claims to listen and act on the will of the people, where do we go when our leaders do not see us or hear us? I think some of you may be tired of seeing us, but like, where are we supposed to go when daily our eyes and ears are seeing and hearing videos with the voices of children slowly dying under the rubble? We are coming to you, our local leaders. You say we are not Chicago. Okay, sure, Chicago's ceasefire gets more attention than, say, a small town in Colorado. But that doesn't mean the collective voices of those in a small town are less than. In regards to the possibility that you did not feel informed enough to make the decision, I can point you to the articles that together lay out Israel's blueprint for ethnic cleansing, articles with evidence that journalists are being targeted to ensure their story is killed, or the articles with evidence that healthcare workers are being targeted to ensure the healers are killed, or the articles with evidence that humanitarian workers are being targeted to ensure the sick, the wounded, and hungry go without life-saving aid, or the articles with evidence of agricultural fields and infrastructure being targeted, giving us a new horrible term called ecocide, or about how every university in Gaza has been destroyed, a term called scholasticide. How about a look at the numbers of innocent men, women, and children killed as a result of Israel's at-all-costs military strategy, which amounts to collective punishment and, by definition, genocide. I could also point to the recent polling numbers that shows the majority of Americans disapprove of Israel's action in Gaza. Most Democrats believe Israel is committing genocide, while the majority of both parties believe there should be an immediate ceasefire. So please let us know what we can do to help put Peoria on the list of cities that has refused to stay neutral on an issue where one side results in more killing and the diminishing possibility of hostages being released while living, and the other side being an immediate and permanent ceasefire. You know, not long ago, I heard someone say that it is inhumane to have chickens next to barking dogs. Sit with that comment while you reflect on the fact that as we speak, a child in Gaza is taking their last dying breath after 3 days under the crushing rubble of their home that was hit with a U.S. bomb. My time's almost up. Thank you for your time and your thoughtful attention tonight. Appreciate it.
We have two more speakers, Jessica Jordan, followed by Ramez Abi Akar.
Hi. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Jessica, and I'm incredibly anxious right now, so bear with me. Firstly, I'd like to thank y'all for listening to us, and I'd like to respectfully request that the council take the ceasefire resolution to a vote. Unless I'm mistaken, y'all in the past have denied such a request because it's not a local issue, and y'all wanted to remain neutral. However, I'd argue it is a local issue, as Caterpillar has a significant role in this community, and they provide Israel with bulldozers and other equipment. In addition, there are members of our community who have been directly affected by the ongoing genocide. And as Americans, our tax dollars are going to fund it. In regards to neutrality, I'd like to leave y'all with two quotes. The first is, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you are choosing the side of the oppressor. And also, as a Hamilton fan, if you stand for nothing, well, you fall for. Thank you.
Ramez Abi Akar.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I didn't come in to hear this word. I just collected them while watching here, you all, how you do practice your political and citizenship life. I was impressed, and this is just a word of thank to you all. I have been here a few times, but this time I saw a variety of topics that you all practice and you give the citizens the chance to talk about. I was impressed by what you do, listening to that liquor certificate along with food service, listening to the chicken raising, in addition to the misery of the Palestinian people. You do a lot of things, and I want to congratulate you for doing that. The fact that you all give the chance to the community to raise their concerns is a very valuable fact. The listening you do to us all and the actions you take to properly respond to our concerns are of great value. Thank you all for the significant role you play in our life.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
We are at executive session.
Okay, I'd like to invite a motion to adjourn and to convene in closed session immediately following the adjournment of the City Council meeting pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 120/2C11 to discuss probable or imminent litigation. Moved by Councilman Euler, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your service.